What character would realistically learn magic in Marvel? This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 226, As a Mage. Isn't it basic for me to communicate with animals? Who is the druid? Frankly speaking, Shenyan likes this world very much. At least the land under his feet is like this. Many cultural customs and people's appearances on this land remind him of his hometown, but in ancient times, sometimes, a little bit of similar substitution is enough to make people smile. He was walking slowly beside the road at this time. It was called a road, but it was just a muddy road. There were towering trees all around. The trees he couldn't name had pink leaves, which were very beautiful. The natural spirits here seemed to like him very much. He just walked by, and a large group of animals followed him. Carnivores even began to live in peace with herbivores, just to follow him without making any noise. They seemed to enjoy the stalking experience. He stopped, and a white female wolf jumped out of the woods. One of her hind legs was bleeding. She looked very uneasy, but she forced herself to grin and growl at the mage. Shenyan squatted down, stretched out his right hand, and asked in a low voice, "What's wrong?" The female wolf immediately ran over and nudged his palm with her head. The low roar in her throat turned into a whimpering sound. The wizard nodded and treated her hind legs. "Oh, a group of strange people are hunting you. How pitiful. Lift your feet a little. It hurts, right?" "It's okay. It won't hurt soon." He did not consider using his usual instant treatment, but the inefficient healing technique. This female wolf obviously has some magic aura on her body. If he lets his magic mark her body, it may cause some other problems. He didn't want to let something happen here because of his own negligence. There were a few howls and rustling sounds from the woods nearby. A voice said on the tree trunk behind the mage, "Put her down, human, or I'll make you look bad." "What if I say no?" The mage heard the sound of a bow being bent, and the one who had spoken earlier answered in an increasingly low voice, "I'll say this for the last time, put her down." The mage ignored him and just nodded to the woods on his side. A huge black bear rushed out from there, roaring and running towards the tree trunk. With a clap of its palms, a short cat man fell from it. He looked at the black bear in horror and screamed. "Stop," Shenyan said, and the black bear really stopped. It turned its head to look at him and roared in grievance. The mage conjured a fruit and threw it to her, then walked over and touched her round ears with a smile. The female wolf followed behind him and growled threateningly at the cat man on the ground. "Hey, don't kill people casually. Thank you for your help. Go back." He patted the black bear's head again, and the big guy left obediently. The cat man who witnessed all this widened his eyes in confusion. He couldn't understand what was going on. A human being could actually talk to a wild beast, and they were even so well behaved. It was a black bear. "I think you'd better apologize to this lady," Shenyan said to him. "What? Apologize to her? Isn't it a simple thing? You hurt her." The cat man blushed. "Apologize? What are you talking about? This beast tribe attacked our village and stole 2 babies. She deserves to die. If she doesn't die now, I hope she will die tomorrow. The same goes for you, human." Shenyan lowered his head and looked at the she-wolf. Is what he said true? The white she-wolf pushed his calf aggrievedly, and hummed in her throat, saying something unknown. The magician nodded and said to the cat man, "She said it wasn't their tribe that did it, but another group of wolves. They were wandering here. You seem to have chosen the wrong person for revenge." The cat man paused. "This is just your one-sided statement, human. What are you going to do?" Shenyan stretched out his hand and tapped the cat man's forehead. He was about to close his eyes and welcome death, but unexpectedly, the pain did not come. He opened his eyes in confusion and found that the female wolf was talking to him. "You are so unreasonable. You suddenly shot me with an arrow. I just came out to catch a fish. What did I do wrong? Why would I attack you? Are you sick?" The cat man was a little confused by her series of words. Of course, he soon discovered another thing. How could I understand what she was saying? He looked at the smiling Shenyan. "You did it, right?" The magician just made a gesture, You two can communicate slowly. I'll go over there and play with them." He pointed to the deer, bears, goats and birds standing in the woods beside him. Just when Shenyan was stroking the crow until it almost fainted in his hand, the cat man came over, and the female wolf led the way in front of him with a proud look. The cat man came to Shenyan and said humbly, "I'm sorry, human." "Have you apologized to her?" The female wolf purred again from her throat, and Shenyan nodded. "Very good, then, we have no problem. You can go." The cat man thought so too. He planned to find the real murderers and make them pay the price, but in the end, he couldn't help asking, "How did you do it? How did you do it?" "Communicate with them," Shenyan answered seriously. "It's very simple, as long as you spend an hour fishing by the river every day, but don't use bait, you can do it." The cat man left half believing and half doubting. The female wolf circled around him, whimpering and asking something. "What? No, no, no. How can this really be possible? I was just teasing him." "Sooner or later, he will talk to himself in the river because he can't catch any fish, then he will become calm and feel the true meaning of nature," the wizard said with a smile. Not far from him, a pair of beautiful eyes looked at him. She was naked, with 9 white tails wrapped around her body, but her spring scenery was still exposed from time to time. Looking at the animals around the man, she pursed her lips in envy. "Damn it, why am I like this? If only it were the same as before, I would also like to be touched by him." Looking at the she-wolf who was enjoying being rubbed on the head, she was so angry that she hammered the ground under her. "And he looks really delicious, and so handsome. What memory can I see this time?" She suddenly laughed foolishly and then disappeared. Chapter 227. Late that night, Shenyan was preparing to set up camp and make a fire to cook. He dismissed the reluctant animals and asked them to go back. Although he was actually very happy to pet the animals, Shenyan knew for the first time that wolves could lie on the ground with their bellies exposed. He began to understand why those druids could stay in the deep mountains and forests for decades. Of course, there was another reason. He did not intend to share his food with the animals. One was that it contained too much magic power, and the other was that if they got a taste of the sweetness, they would start to enter the human village and ask others to cook for them after he left. That would be a funny scene. Both the plants and animals on this land seemed to be very spiritual, and the magic in the air was incredibly rich. Not to mention the ubiquitous natural spirits. Every element in the air was restless. The wizard took out pots and pans and said leisurely, "You'd better come out by yourself, lady." A beautiful woman walked out of the darkness of the woods. She was wearing a coarse cloth and had 2 furry fox ears on her head. The 9 white tails behind her were particularly conspicuous. She deliberately leaned against a tree nearby, showing off her perfect body curves, and stretched herself pretentiously. "Hello, human." "Well, hello to you too." The mage's indifferent response froze her smile on her face, but soon, she regrouped. A pair of blue eyes like the sea suddenly surged with charm. "Don't you want to come and sit with me? We can chat, or do something else." "No, I want to eat." Shenyan rejected her again, and was even too lazy to look at her. "What's wrong with this person?" Harry roared in her heart, but her face was still calm. She took an exaggerated step that she didn't know where she learned from, shaking and shaking to the front of the mage. Even with his concentration, he couldn't help but take a look. Harry immediately shouted in her heart, "I got you, I knew it. Men are like this, as long as I beckon my finger now, let me see your memory." She rubbed her hands, pounced on him, and threw Shenyan to the ground. But the mage's expression was not as lustful as those men whose spirits she easily ate in the past. On the contrary, she only saw a calmness. His black eyes were extremely deep. For a moment, Harry thought she saw fire. "What do you want to do?" Harry couldn't help but speak out her thoughts. "I want to see your memory." The man's voice was like a whisper, as if it came from the sky, and as if it came from the ground. It was both distant and deep. "Are you sure?" "Yes." "As you wish," Shenyan said with a smile. Where am I? Harry asked herself this first, and then she was overwhelmed by the sadness that swept over her. Sadness, regret, anger, hatred, all kinds of negative emotions swirled in her mind, and these things seemed to attack her endlessly. She saw a man struggling to survive in a jungle of steel and concrete, This picture flashed by and then disappeared. She saw the collapsed ruins, the crumbling city, the death of people, the flying blood and corpses. There was also a basement-like place with dissected human corpses. All these made her face pale. Ari had the urge to cry and vomit for them, not because of those emotions, but because of her own thoughts. As if her soul was torn apart, she returned to the real world in just a blink of an eye. She found herself lying on a recliner, covered with a very comfortable thin blanket. The man turned his back to her and asked lightly, "Are you happy watching it?" "What are those?" Ari looked like she wanted to shrink herself into the cup. She pinched the corner of the quilt and asked tremblingly. In the land of the first birth, she had never seen such a terrible scene. Those deaths in blood almost completely drowned her. She did not see any happiness from it. On the contrary, there was nothing but sadness and anger. "What did you see?" the man asked back. "Death. People fell down like wheat. The sky was full of those red beams, and there were those monsters." "They ate people?" The wizard was silent for a while. "Yes, they ate people." He turned around, handed Ari a glass of milk, and said, "This is a lesson for you. Don't pry into other people's hearts casually. You don't need to do this to survive, but those whose memories you have seen, it's difficult for them. Happiness and other positive emotions have been sucked away. You really indulge your instincts." Ari shuddered. "How do you know my name?" Shenyan looked at her with a smile. "I know a lot more. Who stipulates that only you can see my memories and I can't see yours?" "You saw my memories?" Ari screamed in horror. "Yes. How does it feel to have your memories read by others?" Shenyan asked casually. Unexpectedly, Ari suddenly calmed down. She replied coyly, "If it's someone as powerful and handsome as you, I'm actually fine." Without exposing her words that she was trying to cover up, the mage looked at her and looked away, no longer putting pressure on her. He looked at the beautiful starry sky of Ionia and said, "Do you think you need to apologize for doing something wrong?" "Yes." "Very good. I'm sorry." Ari followed suit and apologized to him immediately. But the mage did not accept it. He shook his head. "You shouldn't apologize to me, Ali. You should apologize to those innocent people whose memories and emotions you have absorbed. They are innocent, just because of your own greed. So, I want you to make some compensation to them." Ali wanted to refuse, but for some reason, there was a soft part in her heart, the part that she had always ignored in the past, and spoke for her. "I am willing to do so." "Very good. My request is not excessive." Shenyan stepped forward and touched Ali's forehead. His figure gradually disappeared, leaving only his voice slowly coming in the wind. "I want you to find them and return all the things you have absorbed one by one. It's not excessive, right? As for how to do it, it has been engraved in your mind. Be glad that you didn't go astray completely, Ali. Otherwise you will only get death today." Ali opened her eyes with a start and found that it was already dawn. When did she fall asleep? She looked at the milk in her hand. Even if the milk in the glass was turned over, it didn't spill out, and it was even warm. The morning breeze blew on her face. Ali drank the milk in one gulp and left. 8 o'clock. Miscalculated. Nearly 17,000. Chapter 228. Ominous Village. The village has not been peaceful recently. Laka is very distressed about this matter. He doesn't know what the problem is, but it seems that everyone in the village has become restless. When he got up last night to check the pigsty, he heard his neighbor arguing with his wife, which was unimaginable in the past. His neighbor has always been polite to others and treats his wife as equals. But the words they said during the argument last night were simply unbearable. Laka covered his face and left quickly after hearing only one sentence. He had heard a practitioner who traveled here many years ago say that sometimes people become different from themselves, maybe because there is something wrong with the spiritual realm. Laka is a farmer. He doesn't know what the spiritual realm is, so he chose to report it to the village elders. The elders just smiled kindly and said that he must be too tired recently and asked him to go back and rest more. The moment he turned around, Laka's consciousness fell into darkness. You seem to like fish very much. The she-wolf pressed a fish with her paw and ate it with relish. She ate so much that her nose was full of blood. Obviously, this fish was very much to her taste. The she-wolf raised her head and whined at the mage twice in her busy schedule. She followed the mage all the way across the mountains, even leaving her own tribe for this. But the mage did not help her much in the difficulties and dangers along the way. To his surprise, the young she-wolf always found a way to get herself through the dangers safely. Shenyan leaned against a tree trunk on one side, with a fishing rod suspended in the air in front of him. The mage fished in this tricky way. Don't get me wrong. He is not the kind of person who doesn't know how to appreciate the fun of life, and cheating in fishing loses the meaning of the thing itself. But his hands have more important things to do at this time. For example, communicate with the natural spirits of this land. It was only after he came to this world that he discovered that there were so many natural spirits here. Almost every few thousand meters, a new one would pop out of his spiritual vision to greet him. Their images are different. Some look like a stone, and some simply use the image of an old man. He crossed the mountains today. When it comes to traveling, he never likes to use magic to fly over or teleport away. The meaning of travel is to measure the earth with your feet. At least, you have to drive a car, right? Using the portal is too much. When the mage saw the village at the foot of the mountain, he felt a little unhappy for the first time in a long time. The reason is simple. This ancient land, the beautiful land called Ionia by the locals, is full of vitality, and people and nature live in harmony. He saw countless beautiful scenery along the way, each of which was refreshing. But this village is different. Yes, it is next to the mountain and the river. It is a beautiful place with clear water and mountains, but in the spiritual vision, Shenyan felt a sticky nausea. Even the voice of the nature spirit here sounds like it is sick. Pain, in its long string of incomprehensible mumbling. This is the only word that Shenyan can understand. He frowned. If the nature spirit is willing to show up, he can communicate with it by knowing the language or simply in the soul state. But it was obviously in a very bad state at this time. Not to mention showing up, even speaking seemed to take a lot of effort. Seeing that he could not get more information from the poor nature spirit, the wizard simply withdrew the spell to communicate with it. He held the fishing rod with both hands. As luck would have it, the rod head suddenly fell down. From the momentum, it could be seen that this was a big fish. You have something to eat again. Shenyan grinned at the she-wolf, then lifted it up, and a blue-gray fish with stripes was brought ashore. A moment later, he arrived at the village. The closer you get here, the more you can feel the sticky feeling everywhere. It's like walking in a swamp with heavy boots. It won't take long for you to use a knife to remove the dried mud on your boots. Shenyan was a little helpless. Generally speaking, as the magic power of the wizards deepens, their understanding of magic will deepen. Their spiritual power will also reach a new level. In many cases, this is a good thing. There is only one thing that is not good. They will become too sensitive. Every time they arrive in a new environment, the spiritual tentacles that are instinctively emitted will tell them some of the potential nature here. In other words, if a wizard feels that a certain place is not good, you'd better listen to him. The buildings in the village are quite simple and made of wood. The dome houses and those wooden fences look very beautiful, and the stone pavement is also decent. It seems that the people in this village have a good living standard. Generally speaking, there are no roads to go in those remote places. If you call a muddy road that can reach your ankles when it rains a road. It was noon, and it was time to work. There were few people at the entrance of the village. An old man holding a cane saw the wizard and walked over. He asked, "Young man, where are you going?" Shenyan glanced at him and said nothing. He looked up at the sky of the village, and then said to the old man, "How many people do you control?" The old man's kind smile froze, and he said to the wizard with a completely innocent look, What are you talking about?" He didn't finish his words, and Shenyan lost his patience. He usually only asked questions to those who didn't know whether to live or die, and their end would not be very good. The old man's cane fell to the ground, rolled a few times, and rolled to the feet of the wizard. He picked up the cane with a shiny top and said to the old man who was half kneeling on the ground in pain, "It doesn't matter if you don't want to say it. I will look directly from your brain." Hearing this, his pupils shrank into a needle tip. Then they quickly expanded, dyeing the entire eyeball black, pure black, without any human emotions. The old man, no, this creature's old and wrinkled face began to boil and twist, and fell to the ground like mud. It even corroded the ground into a small pit, but Shenyan seemed completely indifferent to this. He just frowned in disgust, smacked his lips, and said, "You are as ugly as a hippopotamus and a snail who got drunk and then went to fuck a fly." What he said was true. After abandoning the skin of the unfortunate old man, what knelt in front of Shenyan was a green monster that was so fat that even cracks appeared on its skin. There were 2 sharp horns on its bald forehead, and sparse hair and smelly black mud played together on it. It had a very long nose, and its dim yellow eyes were full of resentful light. The she-wolf was frightened by this scene. She jumped behind Shenyan, grinning at the monster, but received a slap from the wizard, signaling her to be quiet. Chapter 229, The Unknown Village. The monster opened its mouth and wanted to speak, but Shenyan stepped over it first. After seeing the true form of the monster, he didn't even want to look through its memory. He might as well go into the village to investigate the truth himself. Anyway, nothing could go wrong with him around. Behind him, the body of the monster began to disintegrate bit by bit until it turned into nothingness. The wizard was even considerate enough not to let it explode on the spot, so as not to dirty the ground. Although he didn't know the blood and body structure of this thing, he thought it should be some disgusting things like mucus. These things always challenged his tolerance for disgust again and again. The village was quiet, and the fields that should have been full of people working were empty. Shenyan stood in the middle of the village and squatted down. He put his right hand close to the ground, closed his eyes, and tried to call the spirit of nature here, and also added some special methods of the Druid sect. Starting from his right hand, a little bit of magic power gently sank into the ground. The trees in the village seemed to have become younger in an instant. New buds sprouted from the old trees, and new leaves grew out in a few seconds, replacing the yellow leaves. "This should alleviate your pain a little. Now, do you mind coming out to talk?" he asked gently in his spiritual vision. A creature full of fear and anxiety stretched out a spiritual tentacle and slowly touched his consciousness that was radiating outward. This time, he could hear the words of the nature spirit clearly. The nature spirit of this land said in a voice that was about to cry, "They are eating people." Who? Evil ghosts. Although the mage didn't know what kind of ghost evil ghosts were, he knew one thing. In a place like Ionia where the spiritual realm and the material realm have long been intertwined, the boundaries between different planes will become thinner here. It is normal for some things to run out and cause chaos, just like he had dealt with countless demon invasions before. "I just don't know if there is an official agency in this land that specializes in dealing with this matter, or people, sex." Retracting his divergent thoughts, he once again patiently said to the nature spirit with a childlike personality, "Don't panic, tell me where they are." The nature spirit burst into tears. "This is why. I don't know where they are, but I keep hearing people screaming. So scary." It screamed away from the mage's consciousness. "Well, it seems that this is the only help I can get from the locals." The mage opened his eyes. He thought humorously. The she-wolf lay beside him, looking around alertly, as if she was on guard for him. Touching her ears, Shenyan whispered, "Well, it seems that we have to do something serious." He lowered his head, looked at the she-wolf who looked very happy, and said with a smile, "You know what? In fact, I used to do this kind of thing often. It's almost my job, but I personally prefer to call it a duty." The she-wolf cried, and the mage stood up. He and the she-wolf disappeared on the spot. Laka opened his eyes in confusion. For a while, he couldn't see anything clearly, as if his eyes had lost their original function. But this honest farmer did not scream, he just blinked, waiting for the moment when his eyes would recover. His wait was worth it. After a few minutes, he could see in the dark. But Laka would rather not see this scene. He saw 2 huge and extremely fat monsters sharing a person, and he knew that person. It was who lived at the entrance of the village. He was still a bachelor at the age of 40. No one liked him because of his big mouth, but no matter how much Laka disliked him, he never thought of letting him die. The scene in front of him made him cover his mouth involuntarily. He saw that the 2 monsters were gnawing on his lower body and the other on his upper body. The internal organs fell to the ground. In this dim cave, only some strange plants on the wall emitted a little fluorescence. Laka began to be glad that he didn't see it too clearly. Turning his head carefully, he found that there were many people lying crookedly around him, all of whom were people from the village. Laka reached out his hand and pushed a fisherman lying beside him. He was usually aloof but very reliable. Unfortunately, no matter how Laka pushed him, he would not wake up. If he was not still breathing, Laka might even think he was dead. The same was true for others. Not long after, the two monsters finished eating eel. One of them looked in Laka's direction, and the honest young farmer held his breath. He was nervous, but also calm. These two complex emotions did not conflict in his brain. Laka quickly leaned against the rock wall and closed his eyes, pretending that he was also unconscious. He heard a monster say in a shrill woman's voice, "You can eat one more." The other one replied in the voice of an old man, "No, Ada said to keep it." "What can he do with it? He will eat it all himself." Laka never thought that he could hear the emotions of jealousy and resentment from the voice of a monster, but the good show was yet to come. He heard a snap. The shrill female voice began to cry softly. "You hit me?" The monster with the old man's voice answered unkindly, "Yes, I did hit you. So what? Eat, eat, eat. You only know how to eat. This patch of meat should be kept. If Ada's method works, we will have endless meat to eat." The monster with the shrill voice stopped crying immediately. Laka could imagine its ugly face without opening his eyes. "Is what you said true? You didn't lie to me? You are really too ugly." Another young voice interrupted their conversation. Laka opened his eyes immediately, but he didn't see who was talking. He only saw a white light and the screams of the two monsters. When he came to his senses, he found that the cave had become as bright as day, and there were only two pools of pus where the two monsters stood before. A man in a black robe stood not far away with his back to him, and a pure white wolf followed him. The man turned his head as if he had predicted the future and asked, "Are you okay?" Laka answered immediately. He was surprised when he heard his own voice. "Is this my voice? Why do you sound so calm?" "Yes, I'm fine, sir." The man smiled and said, "I'll cast a spell for you and your companions. You stay here and don't move. I'll be back in 10 minutes at the latest." Laka nodded, and the man and the wolf disappeared in the next moment. "I'll put 2 more chapters here first. I'll have a meal and come back to continue coding. I spent the whole afternoon seeing a dentist." Sorry, if you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 230, Caution and Bitterness. The wizard did not break his promise. He really came back within 10 minutes, and he didn't even seem to care about it. "First, I have to get you out of here." Laka heard him say this, and then the scene in front of him suddenly changed. For him, it was just a blink of an eye, and he returned to the familiar village from the terrible cave. The villagers all stood up stumblingly, but they all closed their eyes and went back to their homes. Shenyan stood beside him and said, "Great. The matter is perfectly resolved." The she-wolf cried out. Laka had the illusion that he was dreaming, but the feeling of the sun shining on his head made him know that this was not a dream. For some reason, he didn't dare to look the wizard in the eye. Laka whispered, "You saved our lives. How can we thank you?" Laka heard a chuckle. "Thank you? No, I'm not doing this for any reward. Your neighbors will wake up and pretend nothing happened. As for you, do you want to keep this memory? I have to remind you that sometimes, ignorance is a blessing." Laka was not a fool. He could hear what the man who suddenly appeared and saved them all was referring to. In fact, he wanted to vomit just by thinking about the appearance of the two monsters, especially the scene when they were eating eel. Although he felt disgusted at the time, the desire to survive prevented him from screaming. Now in a safe environment, nausea and vomiting suddenly surged into his heart. He said palely, "No, sir." "Are you sure?" "Yes, sir." "Okay." The wizard's eyes flashed with blue light, and Laka's face became strange. He felt drowsy and soon closed his eyes and really fell asleep. But his body seemed to have another consciousness and walked back home by itself. The she-wolf howled again, and the wizard replied, "No, it's no good to let these ordinary people know too much. He may think he can handle it now, but over time, those images will turn him into a madman." Their figures gradually walked towards the entrance of the village, and the wizard continued to say, "I have done this many times before. Why are you looking at me like that? I won't tamper with your memory. And what's more, is there anything interesting in your mind? He got a dissatisfied howl from the she-wolf, and the wizard laughed. Balance is broken. In the temple, an old man raised his head, his eyes emitting a bright purple light, and behind him stood two young men, one with white hair, the other with black hair. They were silent, standing straight, like two statues. A fallen leaf slowly fell and landed on the old man's shoulder. The old man took the fallen leaves and asked calmly, "Kill one person, save one person, and vice versa." Gee, how do you understand this sentence? The white-haired young man behind him stepped forward and answered, "I don't understand, master, but I obey." The old man laughed, hoarse and unpleasant, and then said, "What about you, Shen?" The black-haired young man also stepped forward. His voice sounded particularly calm. "When do we set out, master?" The old man stood up. He was wearing a thin cloth and looked very thin. One is too silent, and the other is too anxious. The true meaning of balance is hidden in all things. Well, let me, an old man, explain it. He turned his head and looked at his two disciples. One of them was his adopted son, and the other was his biological son. Someone just slaughtered a large number of monsters near Taiwasser. If I am not hopelessly old, then he or they should have killed a whole group of evil ghosts in the mountains. Ji said, "What should we do?" "Maintain balance, that's all." "Should we go out to save people?" Shen asked. The old man laughed again, and it was unclear who he was laughing at. "No, Shen, listen carefully. In the past 18 years, you and Ji have only been practicing hard and reading scriptures. The so-called balance is absolute balance. But, what I said actually has a second half," he said slowly. "Killing a demon means killing a person. This is absolute balance. Go down the mountain and find that village. Kill them all. This is the way of balance." Hearing this, Shen's reaction was particularly intense. He widened his eyes as if he couldn't accept it. "How can this be, father?" "No, master, this is the act of an evil demon." His companion, the brother who grew up together. Ji didn't say much. He clenched his fists and bowed his head deeply. The old man was not angry because of the word evil he said. He just continued to talk to himself. "Don't you understand?" "That's right, Shen. When you and Ji understand, it will be the time for the soul to return to balance." As I said. He turned his head. His eyes deep in his eye sockets looked at the young brothers who were not blood relatives but more than blood relatives, and his tone was quite bitter. "But we must maintain balance. Understand, no matter how much it costs, or what kind of bad reputation we bear, or even never being able to turn over, this is acceptable because compared with the things we want to save, it's not worth mentioning. Now, go down the mountain. I look forward to the day when you complete your mission and return." The two bowed silently and saluted, and left the courtyard. Outside the door was a road down the mountain. They were agile and walked fast, as if walking on flat ground. Soon they arrived at a pavilion halfway up the mountain to rest for a while. Shen hammered hard on a tree beside the road, and said fiercely, "Balance." "What kind of balance is this?" Ji sat on a bench in the pavilion, and his tone was inaudible. "We will do whatever the master says." "Don't you have any ideas of your own? No matter how respected the master is, if he says such a thing, do you have to pick up a butcher knife and become an executioner?" "No, Shen, it's not that I don't have my own ideas. I just follow the teachings and the ancient scriptures of the sect. In the past, there were many people who had the same ideas as us, but in the end, the facts proved everything. The world needs balance." Ji said it very calmly, but his right hand behind his back was clenched tightly, even trembling. Shen looked at him as if he was looking at a stranger, and slowly shook his head. "Do you really understand what we are going to do now? We are going to kill people. Kill a group of innocent villagers who did nothing wrong. The dead group of cannibals deserved it." Ji lowered his head and no longer looked at his brother's eyes full of sadness and confusion. His voice was low, but loud enough for Shen to hear clearly. "We are here to maintain balance, that's all." Chapter 231 Wrong Order. "Your dog is very beautiful, sir, but it's too fierce. I have to remind you, she is the alpha wolf." Shenyan was sitting at a roadside tea stall, sipping a cup of tea slowly. The owner of the tea stall probably saw that he was the only customer, so he started to chat with him to kill time, but he obviously didn't know how to choose topics, or he just didn't have good tact. His words made the female wolf growl at him. Once a wolf makes that kind of expression, it is very intimidating to people who have never seen a wild beast. When wild beasts bar their teeth, few people dared to face their fangs. The tea stall owner sounded like he was about to cry. "Can you make it stop baring its teeth at me?" "Sure." Shenyan took another sip and smiled with satisfaction, "but you have to apologize to her yourself. Remember, it's her." The tea stall owner squatted down carefully and looked at the beautiful white wolf. He tried to organize his words. This beautiful lady wolf, I'm sorry I called you a dog. Don't bite me, I was wrong." When he said the word dog, the female wolf took a step forward, startling him so much that he immediately closed his eyes and shouted for help, but the pain did not come. When he opened his eyes, the female wolf was looking at him with contempt, and then whimpered twice. The wizard watched all this with a smile. She said, "You are even." The tea stall owner breathed a sigh of relief. He no longer dared to talk about the wolf and turned to talk about another thing. "Are you a practitioner, a monk?" No, I have rarely seen monks as handsome as you." "Me? I'm just a traveler. At best, I'm just a little special." "Do you know what special things have happened in Presidium recently?" At this point, the tea stall owner became interested. "You have asked the right person. I have opened a shop here for almost 10 years. I have seen all kinds of people, of course, but never someone like you." "What happened in Presidium recently? Let me think about it." He thought for a while, then said, "If I have to say, there are always some Noxians wandering around recently." "Does this count?" "But they are actually good people, just a little rough, and they always talk about power and so on. One of them was challenged by a martial artist from Presidium a while ago because of this matter. He said that they were disturbing people's meditation by discussing such vulgar facts in the Holy Land." The tea stall owner shook his head and said, trying to imitate the martial artist's tone, and even the words he said became half-literate. The mage raised his eyebrows, nodded, and then drank the tea in the cup in one gulp. "Thank you for your information, and the tea is good." The tea stall owner grinned proudly. "Of course, my tea is very famous. Have a good trip." Night fell. Shen's breathing was very uneasy, and he could not maintain his usual calm breathing. Ji, who was squatting beside him, could hear him swallowing saliva every once in a while because of excessive tension. "You have to calm down, Shen," Ji whispered. "I can't calm down, Ji. We are going to kill people," Shen answered him in the same low voice. But in fact, Ji's reaction was not much better than Shen's. He felt that the short knife in his hand was full of sweat, even through the hand wraps, soaking the handle. The clothes on his body were itchy, and in his sight at this moment, the world was stained with a layer of dim light. They squatted on the cliff, overlooking the village at the foot of the mountain. They lived in harmony. At this time, people had finished dinner and spent time at the entrance of the village or at home to prepare for bed. The laughter of children came to their ears from time to time, making the expressions of the two more solemn. Shen took a deep breath again. "Do we really want to do this? This is the way of balance. There is no other way for you and me," Ji responded in a low voice. He felt nauseous about himself, disgusted to despair. "Oh my God, how could I say such a thing?" When it was completely dark, they sneaked into the village. It was very quiet here. They came to the first house at the entrance of the village, and a man snoring came from inside. Ji and Shen, one squatted at the front door, and the other climbed through the window to enter, holding the short knife in his hand. Ji had never felt so difficult to make a decision. He looked at the sleeping man and asked himself, "Do I really want to kill him? This is a living, innocent person. He has never done anything bad. The worst evil he has done is probably just saying a few bad things behind his back. Do I really want to kill him?" he asked himself again. After a while, Ji opened the door with blood on his hands and walked out of the house. His expression was gloomy. Shen looked at the blood on his hands and asked, "Are you really going to kill him?" "Don't ask, it's your turn," Ji interrupted him. They left the house and it was Shen's turn to climb in through the window. Ji stood at the door and untied the bandage on his left hand. There was a deep scar that could be seen to the bone, and the blood was coming out from there. He took a look and then wrapped the bandage tighter. After a while, Shen climbed out through the window. "I can't do it," he said bluntly. Ji's eyes widened and he whispered, "What are you thinking? This is equilibrium, don't pretend." "Ji, I can hear the man snoring." "You didn't kill him at all," Shen interrupted him. The young man raised his head and said word by word with difficulty, "Let's stop the killing that has not yet started. Ji, but this is the order of Master Ku Shao. You and I are both disciples of Hengjing. We must obey. This is a wrong order." "No, I will not obey." "Do you understand what he wants us to do? He wants us to kill people. Kill innocent people. Look at those people. Can you do it?" Shen turned around and pointed at the house. "There are 3 people lying in there. The child is not even as tall as my waist. If you can do it, do it." "Ji. But I can't do it. I would rather go back and be punished." After Shen finished speaking, he panted and walked towards the village entrance with 1 foot deep and 1 foot shallow. It seemed that he had spent all his strength to say these words. Not long after, Ji caught up. Shen asked indifferently, "Why did you follow me?" "Mind your own business." "Hey, what? You want to go back with me to be punished? Shut up, or I'll beat you up." "You can't beat me." "If you dare, let me use my fist blade." The 2 of them walked away while arguing, but not long after they left, another group of masked men with short knives appeared. "Shit, I can't write the last chapter. My tooth is starting to hurt again." "Why is this treatment useless?" "I'll make up for it tomorrow. There will be 6 chapters tomorrow." Chapter 232 The Way of Balance. The sight of Presidium made the mage feel somewhat surprised after a long absence. The Ionians called it the Holy Land, a name that lived up to its name. He and the she-wolf stood on a high cliff and looked down. Below was a city made up of valleys, plains and boulders. Not far away was a waterfall whose source was unknown. Not far from the waterfall was the mage's goal, the magical garden of Presidium. The scene of the garden was difficult to describe in words. In fact, Shenyan would rather call it a jungle. There were not only those colorful flowers, some huge and some small, but also countless towering trees. Just by looking at this wonderful building, the mage felt a gentle breeze soothing his cheeks. He knew that it was the natural spirit of this place greeting him. The she-wolf nudged his calf. Shenyan put his hands behind his back, stared at the scene below, and said, "You want to go there? Sure, let's go." It was 3 days after they returned to the Order of the Balance. Ji and Shen confessed everything to Kushio, including their inner torment and doubts about the balance. They thought they would be punished and even prepared to be expelled from the Order of the Balance. But nothing, no punishment, no reprimand. Even the training time was the same as usual. Master Kushio said nothing, just asked them to continue learning. He didn't even comment on the matter. Days passed in such torment, and they began to doubt whether they had really done something wrong. In order to divert his attention, Shen ran to meditate on an ancient puzzle in the scriptures, and finally fainted due to overwork. Afterwards, Ji, who was full of disdain, called him a fool. A week after they returned to the sect, Master Kushio summoned them. It was still the temple on the top of the mountain. The fallen leaves had already grown new buds. It was already the new year, and the blossoming spirit festival would soon arrive. In front of Master Kushio was a small stone table with many exquisite tea sets on it. He made himself a cup of tea, but did not drink it. "Tell me what you think," he said to the 2 of them, and then picked up the tea bowl. But all he got was silence. Ji and Shen stood side by side in front of him, and no one chose to speak. This silent confrontation made Master Kushio laugh. "You are like the 2 sides of a leaf, similar but different." He put down the tea bowl and continued, "Come in." The door of the temple was pushed open, and a man in black tights walked in. He knelt on one knee to Master Kushio and said respectfully, "Master, the mission has been completed." "Mission?" Shen suddenly felt a little uneasy in his heart. Before he could speak, the man continued, "We killed 2/3 of the people in that village, and the balance has been maintained." "What did you say?" Ji's reaction was beyond Shen's expectations. He thought his brother was an introverted person, but his anger at this time was like a burst of fire. Ji stepped forward and knocked the man to the ground with one punch, but he did not resist. just silently endured Ji's punch until his nose was broken and his face was covered with blood. Ku Shao did not stop him. He even had the leisure to drink another sip of tea. He turned his head to look at Shen and said, "Balance must be maintained, Shen." For the first time in his life, young Shen felt that his father was so strange. He stretched out his hand to stop Ji, who was about to beat the man to death, and said with gritted teeth, "I don't understand why you must kill those innocent villagers. What did they do wrong?" "They didn't do anything wrong, Shen," Ku Shao replied, and at the same time motioned the man to leave. The man who was beaten half to death was like a machine. He stood up, lowered his head and left quickly without saying a word. "But they must die. This is balance. If you want to maintain balance, you must be unkind, disobey the law, and even violate the teachings of our ancestors about benevolence, righteousness, propriety, and wisdom. You must temper yourself to have no emotions." Ji really couldn't stand it. He always respected Kashuo. He was an orphan without a father or a mother. It was Kashuo who picked him up and raised him. As the old saying goes, if you raise someone before you give birth to him, you will never be able to repay him in 100 generations. But he had to ask that question at this moment. "Master, balance, what exactly is it?" "You said that we must maintain balance, which is the key to the long-term existence of Ionia. But I don't understand. Isn't it natural that the man-eating evil ghosts are killed? Those villagers have to pay with their lives for the death of the evil ghosts. This is too ridiculous." Kashuo finished the bowl of tea. He gently put down the tea bowl and stretched out his hand. A yellow leaf fell from the branch of the old tree in the yard. He put 2 fingers together, sandwiched the leaf between them, and said slowly, "You still don't understand. Balance is not the balance of mankind, but the balance of Ionia. We walk between the spiritual realm and the material world, and sometimes we even have to survive in the gap all our lives. But everything is worth it. As long as the balance of Ionia itself is not broken, then both animals and humans can continue to survive on this land, even for tens of thousands of years. Be careful. I don't expect you to understand the true meaning of balance at such a young age. I understand you. When I was your age, I asked my teacher the same question, until I finally saw with my own eyes the doomsday scene after the balance was broken. Master, you turned a blind eye to the man-eating evil spirits, but after those evil spirits were killed, you turned around and asked us to kill those innocent villagers? What kind of balance is this?" Shen asked. "Turning a blind eye?" Ku said as if he was so angry that he laughed. He slammed the stone table and shouted, "What do you think so many disciples of the sect are doing when they go out on missions all day? They are killing evil spirits. All the evil spirits that eat people will be found and killed by us. But we will not kill more or less. We will kill as many as they eat." Ji's expression gradually became unbelievable. If there is a way to kill them before they eat people, wouldn't it be possible to prevent innocent people from dying? Your idea is good, Ji, but we are the Church of the Balance in Ionia. What we want to maintain is the balance of Ionia. Evil spirits and goblins come from the spiritual realm. They are the projections of those magnificent things in the spiritual realm in the material world. If we kill too many, the fragile connection between the spiritual realm and the material world will collapse. Do you know what will happen then? Ku said, closed his eyes and sighed deeply. Now, go down the mountain. The two of you are confined to the sect for 1 year and are not allowed to leave. Chapter 233 Foolish People. Presidium has no defensive measures, or rather, the towering trees everywhere are the defensive measures here. The mage could see the hidden defensive spells above, but out of courtesy, he did not analyze them directly. He only analyzed them with his eyes, and did not even touch them with his mental tentacles. The conclusion he got was not much beyond his expectations. The spell could transform trees into some kind of self-aware guards, which was enough to deal with ordinary people. He walked through a rock gate hundreds of meters high. It was not quite appropriate to call it a gate. It was just a whole piece of stone with a hole dug out in the middle. There were mottled marks on the surface, and it was still solid after countless years of beating. After that, he entered a valley. Most of the buildings here were made of wood, and most of the pedestrians on the street were monks. He also saw many Ionian practitioners with fluorescent lights on their bodies. The she-wolf became careful and cautious. She followed the mage closely and did not dare to leave. The furry tail swept across Shenyan's calves. There were many merchants hawking along the street, most of them selling handmade products. He heard more than one merchant bragging about how effective his bracelets and other items were, and that they were items blessed by a high monk. But what was it actually? It was just a low-quality bracelet. Not to mention that it had magical powers. The mage even suspected that it would break down after a short time. But their business was still very good. After all, Presidium was from Nivali, the center of Ionia, and Presidium was a holy place for all Ionians. Every day, countless people would travel long distances here, either to study in higher education institutions or to meditate in the magic garden. But more people just came here to see the Holy Land. Presidium would not let them down, and it was worth their long journey. Many people would shed tears just by looking at the scene below from the valley. However, all these things actually had nothing to do with Shenyan. He walked along the street all the way to another gate of the city, and behind it was the magic garden. But when he was only 10 steps away from the garden, he stopped. The wizard turned his head and squinted his eyes to look in a certain direction. Animals are often more able to sense the coming of danger than humans, just like the she-wolf now. As Shenyan's expression changed, she immediately lay on the ground, not daring to raise her head, her body trembling with fear. It seems that our meeting will be postponed, Shenyan said to a consciousness in the garden, and the consciousness responded with an old voice. I see that your heart is full of anger. What can make you so angry? Some stupid mortals think they are exercising justice. Shenyan replied coldly. The consciousness sighed. Although we have never met, I can hear the whispers in the wind. The souls in the land all told me your name, which is unprecedented. You must be very popular with them. If you can say such an evaluation, they must have done something very hateful. It's not hateful, it's just pure stupidity. But the problem is that I can't tolerate stupidity, the wizard said softly. He lowered his head to look at the frightened she-wolf and gently stroked her head. He continued to say to the consciousness, can you please do me a favor? I'd be happy to. Help me take care of her for a while, just for a while, not too long. Shenyan squatted down, looking at the she-wolf who was obviously scared to death but still refused to leave him, and whispered, do you want a name? The magic in the air began to condense and vibrate. Many monks who were practicing in the temple suddenly felt dizzy. They knelt on the ground in fear, thinking that the ancient natural spirit of Ionia was angry and begged for forgiveness. The she-wolf was not afraid. She stood up. The wolf's posture was agile and noble. Wildness and elegance coexisted in her. The white and shiny hair fluttered gently in the breeze. She lowered her head and whimpered in a low voice. Very good. The mage's voice gradually faded away, and even his figure gradually became fainter. The she-wolf heard his last words. When I come back, you will have your own name. First anger, then fear. After seeing the bloody corpses, Laka inevitably let these two emotions churn in his brain. Even in his most terrible nightmares, Laka had never seen such a horrible scene. Compared with the rows of corpses in front of him, even being eaten by evil spirits seemed like a good way to die. At least being eaten by evil spirits was not being killed by one's own kind in their sleep for no reason. He stood at the entrance of the village with the remaining villagers. In front of them were the bodies of all the remaining people. Laka's hands and face were covered with blood, which had already formed into lumps. The 3 remaining people spent a lot of effort to drag the others onto the white cloth. In order to respect the dead, they made a stretcher and carried them to the entrance of the village one by one. I don't understand. Who would do such a thing? A young man stood beside Laka. He asked Laka tremblingly, and then began to cry silently. Laka had the same impulse as him. Those people who were alive in the past were now all turned into cold corpses lying on the ground, regardless of men or women, old or young. Even the neighbor's child who had just turned 3 years old half a month ago could not escape the murder. The only thing that Laka could comfort himself was that at least she died without pain and with a peaceful face. Laka turned to leave, and another older man stopped him. He was the lonely fisherman. Where are you going? To find the elders in the province. I don't know. No matter who it is, this matter must be resolved. His eyes were bloodshot. His voice was hoarse. and he looked shaky. The fisherman shook his head. "No, what you need now is rest, Laka. If you set out now, you will be exhausted." "I don't care," Laka said loudly. A rage deeper than darkness knocked him down, but that was exactly what he wanted. He said, "Can you pretend that nothing happened and continue to live in the village? Waking up every morning and looking at their empty houses, can your conscience bear that kind of torment?" "They were killed." Laka's voice was like a roar. He uncovered the white cloth covering the bodies, pointed at the knife marks on their bodies as if revealing the truth, and burst into tears. There are 4 more chapters. Chapter 234. I never pray. That night, there were few stars and it was very quiet. They did not hear the calls of wild animals that became excited at night, only the faint sound of wind and the sound of flowing streams. It seemed very quiet. "This is good. At least you will not be disturbed," Laka thought. He put down the shovel in his hand. It was a difficult task for 3 people to bury the rest of the village. Laka himself could not believe that they actually did it. But now there is a cemetery behind the village, although it made them busy from morning to night. But burying them in peace is the tradition of Ionia. If they are not buried in the soil, Laka may not sleep well. The cemetery was chosen not far from the stream, and most people in the village were lying there quietly at this time. The fisherman stood beside Laka, and he sighed. Laka could not see his joy or anger from his face, but could only hear deep fatigue from that sigh. He said lightly, "May the sheep spirit bring you comfort." The young man stood beside him. He looked very afraid of the fisherman. Laka did not know why. He said timidly, "What about the wolf spirit? My grandmother once told me that if I didn't mention the wolf spirit, he would be unhappy." The fisherman laughed, and his laugh was not gentle. "No, child, the wolf spirit is only responsible for hunting those who refuse to die. This is not his responsibility, and the sheep spirit will let them go to paradise without pain." "Is that really the case?" The fisherman was silent for a while. "No, I don't know, child. No one has really seen the sheep spirit and the wolf spirit with their own eyes. But, because of this, there are some things you can only do yourself." He patted the long sword at his waist, which was something the fisherman dragged out from under his bed. When he saw it, Laka was surprised, because even he could see that it was definitely a long sword. He didn't ask the fisherman what he was going to do with the sword. The young man sighed and said, "I'd better pray to the wolf spirit. I don't want them to die and be torn apart by the wolf spirit because of us. My grandmother will scold me in her dream if she knows about this. She scolds people so badly." After that, he closed his eyes devoutly, put his hands together and began to pray. Ratchet did the same. The fisherman stood aside with his hands folded on his chest and did not join them. "Don't you pray?" Ratchet asked. "No, I never pray." "Why?" "Because I have to hold the sword." "Ratchet, how can someone who prays with his hands together hold the sword?" The fisherman replied. They left the village early the next morning. Ratchet and the fisherman set out to find the Presbyterian church in the province, where they should be able to get some help. The young man chose to leave and planned to travel around. When talking about this, he had a smile on his face and said that he had wanted to do this for a long time. However, he burst into tears while laughing. Ratchet didn't know whether his journey would be as smooth as he thought, but he wished him well. G seemed a little uneasy. Unlike Shen, he could immerse himself in books to escape the problem that was stuck in his throat. But G couldn't let it go, nor could he escape. Whenever he thought of Ku's words and his cold orders, a kind of disgust would flash through his heart. In order to make himself feel better, he began to train frantically. He kept running with weights along the town at the foot of the mountain. This morning, at dawn, he put on the special weight-bearing clothes. But this time, as soon as he opened the door, he saw a stranger standing in front of the door. The Order of the Balance is a very secretive sect. It is not as ostentatious as other temples or martial arts schools, wishing the disciples would fly everywhere. In fact, they only have a total of more than 50 people. He and Shen have lived in the town at the foot of the mountain for 18 years. The townspeople don't even know their true identities. They just think they are reserve monks of the temple on the top of the mountain. G tensed his body without leaving a trace. Who would stand in front of someone's door at dawn without saying a word? He asked. "What do you want?" The strange man raised his head, and Ji suddenly felt a stinging pain in his eyes. First it was pain, then dizziness. He fell to the ground with a gasp, feeling ashamed as if he was naked in front of him. Ji heard the man say, "You survived, kid, because you didn't kill them." He raised his head, looked at the man, and said with difficulty, "I don't know what you are talking about." The man's face was expressionless. "Don't think about quibbling. I can look through your memory. I can tell whether it is true or false. Now, stand up." Ji heard him sneer. Balance? Bullshit. If it were in the past, Ji would fight with him for what he said, whether he was an opponent or not. But now, he lowered his head in shame. Of course he knew that it was wrong. You don't need others to tell you that this kind of thing, you can know it. Just like you don't need others to tell you that killing your mother is wrong. But he is a member of the Balance sect after all, even if he doesn't understand what balance is. But Ku Shao's upbringing and the education he received since childhood made him temporarily ignore this matter. There was a sound of breaking air, and Ji could guess who it was without turning around. Shen lived next door to him, but before he could remind Shen to be careful of this man, he heard a cry of pain. He looked back and found Shen floating in the air, his face flushed. "Ah, one more person who doesn't need to be killed. Leave, the farther the better." The man put him down and said lightly, "Cough. What are you talking about?" Shen lay on the ground, rubbing his neck and breathing hard. "Don't you understand?" The man laughed. "I'm going to kill people, both of you. Remember that village? Everyone there is dead. Alas, the magic I set can only cause harm to non-human creatures. I didn't expect that they would be killed in their sleep. This is my dereliction of duty," the man said naggingly. His eyes were calm. Shen suddenly felt a chill. He climbed up and blocked in front of the man. "Oh, do you want to stop me?" Shen didn't say a word. He just gritted his teeth and stood in front of the man. The man laughed. "What are you doing? Do you think you are a hero?" "I don't think I am." "Then get out of the way," the man said coldly, and with a wave of his sleeves, Shen flew out. Ji wanted to go over to check on him, but he was completely unable to move and could only stand there stiffly. He watched the man walk past them and slowly stepped onto the steps up the mountain. Chapter 235 Kindred. Bang! Ku Shao crawled on the ground like a dog. He had just been knocked out and knocked over the table. As a master of the Order of Balance, he seemed powerless in front of this man. Even the energy in his body could not be used. It was motionless like a pool of stagnant water. "Do you know why I came to you?" Ku Shao did not answer, and he got a more severe pain. In the pain, he smiled. "Physical pain cannot make me surrender. Evil demon." "You call me an evil demon?" The wizard laughed dumbly, and he was not going to continue to talk to this bastard. The so-called way of balance he adhered to was meaningless to him. Some of the words in it might make sense, such as being kind to nature and being kind to others. But apart from these principles that everyone knows, the core concept they adhere to is an absolute bastard idea. The most ironic thing is that these maintainers of balance themselves have not transcended the shackles of human beings. You are obviously a human being, but you don't regard your own kind as human beings. Even the most arrogant wizards in Camartage know that their magic power needs to be used to shield ordinary people from the shadows from other dimensions. Their spells are only released on demons, ghosts, angels and scum. Civilians do not need to be aware of their existence. Just being protected by them is enough. And the paranoid mental patient Bruce Wayne has never been cruel to innocent civilians. Although he is a crazy cross-dresser and has a very dark mentality and does not trust anyone, he at least stands on the side of humans. Even the demon hunters who are scolded as mutant hybrids stand firmly on the side of humans. You have never seen a demon hunter who takes money from monsters to kill people? You don't understand. Balance must be maintained. If the way of balance is broken, the disaster will affect the whole of Ionia. Can you take this responsibility? Ku said with his eyes wide open, and he said fiercely in midair, "I can." The wizard said lightly, "Even if the world is destroyed, I have a way to pull it back, not to mention that it is just a simple imbalance. Besides, whether this happens or not is another matter, you stupid waste." The corner of Ku Shao's eye twitched, and his attitude softened. "If you just want to vent your anger, kill me, but please don't break the balance. I beg you, vent your anger." "No, no, No, you think too low of me. The reason for my anger is not because of you, although you are indeed a fool, but this time I am the stupid one. Shenyan laughed at himself. Even I didn't expect that they didn't die in the attack of evil spirits, but were killed by their own kind who came from thousands of miles away in their sleep. Kushao suddenly felt uneasy. What do you want to do? Aren't you always maintaining balance? Two red lights lit up in the wizard's eyes. Kushao, who stared at his eyes, couldn't help but bulge veins on his forehead, and the great pain made him roll his eyes. The wizard dragged his soul out and threw it into the spiritual realm. In the agony of his soul being ripped out alive, Kushao saw thunder and storm roaring at each other in the spiritual realm. Countless malice turned into pure dark monsters and rushed out of the spiritual realm and came to reality. People were devoured wantonly, mountains and rivers were broken, and the once beautiful scene of Ionia was gradually withering. The sky turned into a blood-red rag, and Kushao stood on the ground full of blood and corpses. Watching all this, he held up a pool of blood in front of him. His expression seemed to be crying and laughing. All this was exactly the same as what he had seen before. Behind him, Shenyan's voice came. Now, the balance is broken. No, Kushao screamed and then died. His soul dissipated into nothingness, and the mage waved his hand in disdain, dispersing the illusion in front of him. What about the master? He couldn't even see a low-level illusion. Instead, this balance was worth his study. There is no absolute balance in the world, this is obvious, but from the memories seen in the minds of the two young men at the foot of the mountain and this bastard, this sect has lasted for at least hundreds of years. If only one or two fools believed in such a stupid doctrine, it would be fine, but for hundreds of years, countless people followed one after another. There must be something else behind this. He did not leave directly, but raised his head. Two figures who came from nowhere stood in front of him. Where is the soul? Did he escape? The one who spoke was a black wolf. His huge body was like a black shadow, and his face was covered with a white mask. No, dear wolf, he disappeared. Another figure spoke. She was all white and had sheep's hooves, wearing a black mask. Her voice was ethereal and silent, with the echo of the dead. The wizard frowned. Death? No, it doesn't look like you. Well, I'm getting interested. The wolf turned around and asked, this human is very special. Sheep, can I hunt him? No, wolf, his death has not yet come. Wait, I can't see when he will die. The sheep's voice became doubtful, and in contrast, she pulled the silver-white longbow in her hand. The wolf howled excitedly, escaper, he is an escaper. Chase, I'm going to start the chase. It pounced on him, but was slapped back by the wizard. Shenyan shook his hand in disdain. You should be very suitable to be a police dog. Come back, wolf. The sheep waved to the wolf who was spinning in a daze, and it went back obediently. The sheep said to the wizard, where did you come from? Why can't I see you die? The wolf whispered behind her, he's an escapee. Sheep, he's an escapee. We should hunt him down. It seems we have a lot of problems with each other. Shenyan spread his hands and continued, but I have some other things to deal with now. Hearing the rejection in his words, the sheep looked at him deeply and said in an ethereal voice, we are Kionju, human, remember us. When the day comes that you die, we will come to you. What a novel parting words. You really know how to talk. Watching them leave, the wolf kept shouting the word escaper, and was knocked on the head by the sheep with the silver-white longbow in his hand, and then fell silent. Their departure was as traceless as their appearance, and they disappeared abruptly in the next moment. The wizard sighed regretfully. The wild god of death is really fresh, but it's a pity that we can't study it. What a pity. There are 2 more chapters. Chapter 236 Scholars. It was not the first time for Laka to leave the village, but it was the first time for him to travel with someone. The fisherman was a very mysterious travel companion. He didn't talk often, and he was basically the one who led the way along the way. There were a few times when they met a few Vastaya people while camping, and he came forward to deal with them. Laka was surprised to find that the fisherman was quite accomplished in persuading others. He was very eloquent. Sitting by the campfire, Laka quietly watched the flames burning on the firewood. The crackling sound did not sound monotonous to him. After all, He had never done such a thing before. The sound of the fisherman's footsteps came slowly. Laka looked up and found that he was carrying a big bright red fish and his trouser legs were wet. Noticing Laka's look, he grinned and said, "Fortunately, my skills are not rusty. This fish looks big. How did you catch it without a fishing rod?" The fisherman took out the knife from his waist and said, "Fishermen can't just rely on fishing rods. You can't catch many fish that way. I usually put a net with adjusted mesh above the stream, let the larger fish swim over and get caught. As for the smaller ones, I let them go. Sometimes I can catch something else." He held the knife, exhaled, looked at the big bright red fish in front of him, and said to it, "I'm sorry, but we need you to spend this long night and journey." After he finished speaking, he cut the fish and explained to Laka, "This is the tradition of my tribe. If you encounter a wild beast and have to kill it, you must be respectful to it." Tribe. Laka muttered that sentence. He knew that the fisherman was not an Ionian. He came to their village and lived there 10 years ago. He was a very nice person, but very lonely, and he was too big and strong for an Ionian. The fisherman was more than 2 meters tall, with muscles that looked like rocks. The fisherman finished preparing the fish, skewered it, and placed it over the fire, then patiently waited for it to cook. "How long do you think it will take us to find someone willing to call the spirits of the village?" Raja asked. He and the fisherman had 2 goals in this journey. The first was to find a caller who could communicate with the dead, or at least know who killed them. The second was to find a monk who was willing to pray for their souls. This could only be done by monks, no one else. The Ionians were very persistent in this regard. "It's hard to say," the fisherman replied, picking up his long sword that was leaning against a tree trunk nearby, placing it on his legs, and stroking the hilt with his right hand. "Maybe a month, maybe a year." "Will it take a year?" The fisherman smiled. "Laka, you may not know, but the necromancers are very difficult to get along with, and they have been hard to find in recent years. It is said that some people from the Order of the Balance came to them a few years ago, saying that they broke the connection between the spiritual realm and the material world, and that they were all evil demons." Laka said in surprise, "How could it be? When Lei's grandmother became a vengeful spirit because of water in her coffin, it was a necromancer who solved the problem for us. How could they be evil demons?" "That's a matter between practitioners, Laka. As for ordinary people like us, let's focus on the present." "Here, the fish is ready." He handed the fish to Laka. "Don't you want to eat it?" Laka swallowed his saliva, but didn't take it. "No, I don't eat fish," the fisherman answered seriously, and when he saw Laka's dull expression, he laughed. "Just kidding, I'm just not hungry." Laka thought to himself while eating the fish, the fisherman was not a difficult person to get along with. Ionia does not have a unified government. A large piece of land is connected to many small islands, and various provinces are spread on it. Most Ionians never leave their village in their entire lives, but Laka not only left his village, but even crossed the province. The fisherman was right. They had spent 3 months on the journey. They crossed 2 provinces and arrived at Nivali, which was close to Presidium but still a little far away. This place was indeed the center of Ionia. Laka felt ashamed of his monotonous coarse clothes more than once, but no one looked at him with the eyes of a country bumpkin. Not once. Everyone they met on the road treated them with a peaceful attitude. Laka was not an idiot. He thought that it was probably related to the fisherman. After all, he was more than 2 meters tall. The fisherman called the owner of the inn and asked, "Excuse me, I would like to ask if there are any famous monks in the area? Also, do you know where to find a necromancer?" The owner was a middle-aged man. He must have looked good when he was young, so he looked very bookish when he was old. Compared to a boss, he looked more like a scholar in a long gown. He frowned and thought for a while. "Guessed. There are many monks, but I'm afraid they don't accept outside commissions. As for the necromancer, I haven't heard their name for a long time." Laka sighed in disappointment. The boss continued, "But I do know another one. He is a traveler. He is also a knowledgeable scholar. Maybe you can learn something from him." "Excuse me, boss, but scholars don't know how to summon spirits," the fisherman said. The boss laughed. No, he is not a scholar in the traditional sense." "Well, how should I put it? Although it is a bit difficult to say, The local practitioners are very afraid of him. Please forgive me, I can't say too much, otherwise, they will cause trouble. The fisherman nodded thoughtfully, and he paid the boss a little more money as a thank you. The other party accepted it with a smile, and then added another dish to them. Laka ate the hot meal, and couldn't suppress the smile on his face. Although the venison and fish were both very good, he still wanted to eat something hot. The cooking skills of the chef behind this inn should be very good, at least much better than the inn they stayed in before. The owner of that inn hired a Vastaya cook to save money, and the dishes he cooked were very sweet. You don't want to know what a portion of sweet beef tastes like, believe me. After dinner, the fisherman asked for 2 more rooms. After asking the scholar's specific location, they were ready to set off. When they were about to leave, the boss stopped them. Forgive me, but I forgot to tell you before. The scholar raised a white wolf, and he called her Wind. You'd better respect the wolf. The last person who went to find him was chased all over the street by her because he said the wolf was a dog. He raises wolves? Yes, in fact, he has a good relationship with animals. It's strange to say, I've never seen a person with a group of cats and dogs following him on the street, and a group of birds that came from nowhere. They all followed him. It's really strange. There is another one. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 237. Every injustice has its perpetrator, every debt has its creditor. The scholar's residence was not difficult to find, and it was even very conspicuous. Most Ionians used wooden buildings, and a few chose to make their own bricks, but the scholar's residence was a whole black spiral tower, towering into the sky, very spectacular. Well, Laka, do you think we should go up and try our luck or leave now? The fisherman sighed and asked, what's wrong? Why do you say that? Because he lives in a place like this. The price must be very high, and we don't have much money. At this moment, a young man came from behind them. He had white hair and was very strong, but he was still far inferior to the fisherman who was like a wall. He held a wooden box in his hand and said to the 2 people, excuse me, please make way. I want to go through. In addition, Mr. He does not charge money. If you have any problems, you can go directly to him for help. I can help you. Laka and the fisherman looked at each other, and the fisherman said, then we are very rude. Thank you for your help, sir. What is your name? G. The young man said lightly, and then came to the heavy oak door and kicked it with his foot. The copper handle on the wooden door shook, and they heard the wooden door make a sound. Can you stop kicking me every time? You asked for it. Door. You can clearly see me, but you just don't open the door. G replied, behind him. Both the fisherman and Laka widened their eyes. They didn't expect to see such a scene. Okay, why are you so fierce? I just wanted to play a joke on you. The door opened with a murmur, and behind it was a whole dark area. The place where the ceiling should be now reflected the beautiful starry sky. Countless stars and various planets were slowly rotating on it. Some of them were close enough to even make sounds. Faced with such a strange scene, G sighed and said impatiently, who is on duty today? Forget it. No matter who it is, turn off the viewing mode quickly. We have guests. A voice came from the darkness. Who is it? G? Oh, sorry, I forgot to adjust the mode back. Laka and the fisherman saw that the scene disappeared in an instant, and Laka felt a little regretful. He saw a broom staggering on the floor and jumped over, and said to G, where did you go today again? Shen was punished again. He still doesn't understand the practical application of the spiritual realm that the master told him. He just went out to buy some things, and he was punished again. Ha, he deserves it. G ruthlessly laughed at the Shen they mentioned, and then put down the box in his hand. He turned to the 2 and said, what are you doing here? The fisherman kept his attitude low. He was not an idiot. Such a scene was not something a scholar could achieve. The Mr. He, whom he had never met before, must be a powerful person, most likely a magician. He bowed his head and said respectfully, we want to find a necromancer. We heard that Mr. He is a knowledgeable scholar and a traveler who travels all over the world, so we want to come here to ask. G thought for a while, and then he said, calling a necromancer? Actually, I can do this. There is no need to trouble Mr. He is busy studying something recently. Who do you want to call a necromancer for? Your relatives? How long have they been gone? Laka and the fisherman looked at each other again. Laka took a step forward and became serious. This matter may involve some other people. Are you sure you want to know? In the speculation of Laka and the fisherman, this matter would involve many people, most of which were the fisherman's speculations. He identified from the wounds on the bodies that there were multiple murderers, and they were used to using knives. The actions were quick and decisive, and the difference between men and women was different. They should be very strong and often do this kind of thing. That night, let alone screams, the fishermen didn't even hear footsteps. They guessed many people, but they all felt that there was no reason. Who would kill people who had no grudges against them? What's more, they didn't even let go of children. In the fisherman's understanding, only revenge can make people so unscrupulous. G frowned, and he became serious. Tell me, no matter who it is, I will do justice for you. Killing someone in pain with his life is a matter of course. Laka simply told the story, and then G's reaction made him feel very strange. His face was gloomy at first, and then became guilty. Finally, it turned dread due to shame. After getting the name of the village, he knelt down directly. G took out a short knife from his belt, and he offered it with both hands and handed it to Laka. He lowered his head and said in a deep voice, "To be honest, I was a member of the Order of the Balance a few months ago. If nothing unexpected happens, the tragedy in your village must have been caused by the Order." Racha was shocked. He never thought that he could ask for help from the murderer, but the man's attitude made it impossible for him to take the knife. After all, he was just a young man, but the fisherman was much more straightforward. The fisherman drew his sword and asked, "Did you participate in the massacre of the village?" G answered without hesitation, "No, I tried, but I couldn't do it." He raised his head and looked at the fisherman, with a hint of relief in his eyes, and then lowered his head deeply, posing as if he was ready to be killed. "Please do it." The fisherman did not let him get what he wanted, and he retracted the blade. Then he said calmly, "Every wrong has its perpetrator. Every debt has its creditor. Isn't this an ancient saying of your Ionia? Since you didn't kill anyone and you're just a member of the sect, why should we attack you? I don't want to tell my ancestors after I die that I killed an innocent person." G was still kneeling on the ground. After taking a deep breath, he said, "I may not be innocent. You don't know that although I didn't do anything, they entered the village after me. I didn't notice their arrival and I couldn't stop them. From this point of view, I am still guilty." "Come on, boy. You are taking your anger out on yourself. I can see that you can't do such a thing." The fisherman shook his head and continued, "Anyone who can do such a thing is either a madman or a madman who doesn't think he's crazy. I can still tell the difference between a normal person and a madman. As for you, you're quite normal." He turned to Laka and said, "It seems that there's no need for a necromancer. Ionia's words are really true. Fate is really wonderful. What do you think?" Laka nodded. "But we still have to find a monk to pray for everyone, otherwise they will come to us in dreams." G raised his head suddenly. "I can help you with that." The 6th update was supposed to be stuck for a while, but it's not a big problem. Good man, I'm still typing at 2:40 in the morning. Chapter 238 Sujizen Temple. What Laka said about the dead appearing in dreams was just an old superstition of the Ionians, and he would feel guilty if he didn't do it. But G was sincere in saying that he could help. Unfortunately, it is not easy to find monks who are willing to travel thousands of miles to pray for the souls of others these days. Most of the monks in the temples are dedicated to practice. They have no other wishes and just want to spend the rest of their lives in peace and stability in their own temples. The life and death of others have nothing to do with them. A few of them will occasionally accept some local prayers, or help people get rid of evil spirits, but that is just to get money to practice better. If you want to find a monk who is willing to travel thousands of miles to pray for the souls of others, you can only find those wandering monks. They are very special among monks. Wandering monks also value practice. but they are different from their companions in the temples. They put their practice on the road. These stubborn practitioners follow the ancient tradition. They will measure the land of Ionia with their own feet. Everything they see during this period is practice. They will treat the poor for free and teach orphans for free. If they see injustice on the road, they will also take action, thanks to their special training. Wandering monks are usually very powerful. About this, Laka has no doubt. He heard a story about how a wandering monk defeated a giant tiger as tall as a mountain with his bare hands hundreds of years ago. It must be admitted that the reason why monks are so respected in Ionia is largely because of wandering monks, but they are difficult to find. Wandering monks are on the road all their lives. Ionia is too big, and so far no wandering monk has fulfilled their collective ambition, which is to measure the land of Ionia with their own feet. G said, the local monks won't stray too far from their temples. Have you ever considered looking for monks near your village? The fisherman answered his question. The monks near the village charge too much. We can't afford it. What's more, that's the funeral expenses for 63 people. We can't afford even one. G pondered for a while. Okay, it looks like we have to go to Suji Temple. Shuji Temple? Where is that? Another black-haired young man who walked down the stairs answered their questions. His face looked very tired, but his eyes were still bright. It's an ancient place of meditation, where there are many wandering monks. If we are not lucky enough to meet a wandering monk on the road, we might as well try our luck there. Who are you? My name is Shen. Kushao, who issued the order about your village, is my father. Shen answered calmly, as if the whole thing had nothing to do with him. He continued, Gushuo is dead, and the members involved have also died with him. The remaining miscellaneous personnel have been disbanded. Now, I am the only remaining member of the sect. If you still want revenge, you can come to me. Don't be silly, Shen, the sect is gone. Even if you refuse to quit. Ji shook his head. Shen turned to look at his companions, and he said firmly, no, Ji, father was too extreme in many things, and he did many wrong things. Someone must make up for his mistakes, and that person can only be me. The fisherman interrupted their conversation and said, let the hatred end here, although I don't know what the order of the balance is. But the people are dead, and I can't blaspheme the dead or ask for their souls from the sheep spirits and wolf spirits. Help us find a monk who is willing to save them. That's enough. Laka continued. Suji Zen Temple, Suji Temple, whatever you call this place, it is located on a small island in the east of Ionia, and it is not as beautiful as other places in Ionia. On the contrary, Suji Monastery is located on a snowy mountain, and the environment is extremely harsh. Snowstorms and steep cliffs are basically the only scenery here. Shen, Ji, the fisherman and Laka, wearing thick cotton clothes, walked along a path on the edge of the cliff with difficulty. The piercing cold wind made their faces hurt as if they were cut by a blunt knife. The fisherman walked in front, saying that he was the tallest and standing in front could block the wind and snow for others. Laka was the thinnest, and he stood at the end of the team. Ji and Shen were in the middle of the team. How long will it take to reach the top of the mountain? Laka shouted at the top of his voice. He didn't want to talk like that. In his impression, only the most crude and vulgar people would talk to others like that. But at this time there was no other way to make his voice reach the ears of others. Hearing his voice, the fisherman turned his head and shouted loudly, it's almost there. Ji's voice was carried by the whistling wind into Laka's ears. You don't have to follow us. This road is too dangerous. No, if we asked them to perform a ritual for the villagers, how could they not come in person? Laka was more stubborn than normal people could imagine in some aspects. Ji didn't say anything else. They climbed the mountain silently and reached the top of the mountain when it was almost dark. Suji Zen Temple is not impressive or grand. It is made of wood and is shaky in the howling cold wind on the top of the mountain. It has existed for thousands of years, but it has never really collapsed. There is a statue standing at the door. At least Laka really thought it was a statue before he moved. He was shirtless, but he was still calm in such bad weather. He stood on one leg, with the other leg raised to his knees, and clasped his hands together in meditation in the wind and snow. An old oil lamp hanging in front of the Zen temple was still bright in such a wind, and the light illuminated half of his face. Laka felt that he was like a stubborn stone. "Hello, guests who have come from afar." The strange monk opened his eyes, and he bowed his head politely to greet them. G stepped forward. "Hello, master. We only come here to I'm not a master." "The dragon knows what you want. Guests, please come in," the monk said with a smile and turned sideways. The shabby wooden door behind him opened suddenly. Laka didn't know whether it was blown open by the wind or what, but this place made him feel creepy and peaceful at the same time. The four people entered one after another. The monk was still standing in front of the door, and his voice reached their ears through the wind and snow. "Please wait a moment. The master in the temple is meditating, but he will wake up soon." Chapter 239, Dragon. The monk spoke very quickly, really very quickly. At least at the moment the door closed, a sturdy old man walked out of the darkness of the Zen temple. He was also naked from the waist up, revealing his muscles that were like cast iron. His hair and beard were all white, but he did not tie them up, letting them dance wildly in the wind. For some reason, when Laka saw him, he thought of a roaring dragon, but the old man smiled slightly, and the illusion disappeared. He walked towards the four people, and the snowflakes could not even fall on his shoulders. He bowed deeply in front of the four people, and they hurriedly returned the greeting, not daring to be disrespectful. The old man stood up and said, "The dragon knows what you want. But the dragon still needs to know something." "What is it?" G asked. The old man did not answer, but smiled and looked at the fisherman. Just this glance made the fisherman's muscles tense, and in such cold weather, he began to sweat. "The dragon sees that there is still anger in your heart, but he doesn't know why you refuse to release it," the old man said. The fisherman smiled stiffly. "Angry? Me? No." He shook his head dryly, and the old man did not expose him, and continued, "The past is like evil spirits dragging you. Guest, if you don't want to be dragged into the dark abyss by them, please release your anger like a dragon, and remember to let it go." After talking about the fisherman, he looked at Laka again. Laka's heart tightened. He didn't understand what the old man and the fisherman were talking about, but he knew that the fisherman's past was obviously very mysterious. It can be seen from his body shape, personality, and the sword. But what about him? He is just an ordinary person. What can the old man say to him? "You are strong and have a lot of endurance. Kid, have you ever thought about becoming a wandering monk?" the old man asked gently. Laka blinked, thinking for a while before saying, "Thank you for your evaluation, master. But I don't think I am qualified to be a wandering monk." "I am not qualified yet. You will know if you are qualified after trying, child." The old man just smiled mysteriously, turned to Shen and said, "It's a pity for the apprentice of the Order of Balance. It seems that Kushuo has deviated from the right path after all." This sentence made Shen's expression become strange, and he asked, "Do you know something?" "I don't know. But the dragon knows." The way of balance may be a beautiful vision when it was just created, but humans are only humans after all. You can't pass on your thoughts across hundreds of years of inheritance and remain unchanged. No one can fully understand another person's thoughts. Your father was blinded by something. The old man's words were like a puzzle, and he himself knew this. "Don't blame me for being a riddle, young apprentice. It's just that you don't know these things yet. When you really become a master of the Order of Balance, come and ask me." Shen nodded silently. Ji didn't speak, but he was very nervous. He knew it was his turn. The old man turned his gaze to him and said calmly, "You are impatient as fire, but you keep it under solid ice." "Good, good." "Child, tell me, what kind of person is the scholar you know? What kind of evaluation do you want from me?" Ji asked back. A few words from one person cannot fully describe another person, master. Moreover, I don't know how you know him, nor do I know what your intention is in asking this question. The old man laughed. "I should have known him longer than you have. I knew him when he just came into this world. I just want to hear your evaluation of him, that's all." Ji was silent for a while and then replied, "I haven't been with him for a long time. In my eyes, he is a very strange person. He seems to be able to see through everything. No matter what kind of mystery it is, he can solve it with just one glance. But he doesn't look down on others because of this. I have seen him treat a beggar peacefully, and I have also seen him scold a local powerful businessman. It seems that in his eyes, people are no different. He is very powerful, at least stronger than anyone I have ever seen. That day, he went up the mountain for only a few minutes and killed Master Ku Shao. And I have seen Master Ku Shao break cliffs and split waves with my own eyes. Just what? But the more he acts like this, the more I don't understand him. I don't understand how a person can have such wisdom and strength at the same time, but not be tempted by power. Because of this, I am very afraid of him. Fear? Yes, if a person acts like he has nothing else to ask for, then he must be craving for something else. This is human nature. The old man nodded. Did he hurt you? No. Then did he hurt those innocent people? No. Then why are you afraid of him? Because you think he has other intentions? He is so strong. If he needs something, he only needs to wave his hand, and he can get everything in this world. But he didn't do that, right? Ji was a little dry-mouthed. He couldn't express his thoughts correctly, and could only jump out of his mouth a few words. But this is not common sense. The old man laughed loudly. There are so many unreasonable things, kid. Don't get me wrong. I just want to tell you one thing. There are some people in this world that you are destined not to speculate with common sense. Their world is beyond your understanding, so let yourself go. You are just a mortal. There are too many things you can't understand. Try to treat them with a normal mind. You will encounter more incomprehensible things in the future, such as this one now. As the old man finished speaking, his face began to burn slowly. The golden flame came from nowhere and climbed on him, gradually dyed his whole body golden, and turned into a faint fluorescence floating in the wind. The old man disappeared, and a huge golden dragon appeared in the sky. His huge and majestic eyes looked at the four people in the courtyard, but he did not continue to move. Warrior from the bitter cold land, you have unfinished karma from the first half of your life. If you don't resolve it soon, you may face misfortune. Innocent child, the beauty in your heart has not yet been defeated by this dangerous world. Try to keep it. One day in the future, you will be proud of it. Apprentice of balance, your father went astray. You are very similar to him when he was young. I hope you can get the way of balance back on track. As for you, young man, don't overthink. Sometimes, actions are the most straightforward expression of a person's heart. After the dragon finished speaking, it slowly dissipated. At this time, Laka found that the seemingly endless blizzard in Suji-zen temple slowly stopped. The monk outside the door opened the door. He had changed into a linen shirt, put one hand together and bowed slightly to them. He said, "The dragon sent me to save the unfortunate dead." Chapter 240, Salvation. The original team of 4 was reduced to 3, and the fisherman left. He said he had things to do. Laka didn't know what he would face when he returned, but from the words of the dragon, he felt that the fisherman would face many dangers. However, with the addition of the monk, there were 4 people again. "May the spirit of nature bless you, fisherman," Laka said to him at the moment of parting. The fisherman left and said, "My full name is not the fisherman, but it is too troublesome to say it in the Ionian language, so I have asked you to call me the fisherman all these years. Just call me Keter. May you be as strong as the ice of Pharrell Jord. Farewell, my friend." Just like that, he left. When he returned to the village again, it was already September. Trees and weeds grew wildly, and the shadows of weeds were everywhere in the fields. Laka also saw some animals running through them. There was only tranquility here. The monk put down the package in his hand, squinted his eyes and looked at the sky, then sat on the ground. "Wait until tonight, and then we can officially pray for the souls to be reborn." Ji and Shen's eyes were quite complicated. They looked at the empty houses in the village, and they remained silent. Laka pushed open the door of his house, and there was dust everywhere. But fortunately, no deer or other things broke in. At least the things were placed as they were when he left, and now they are still there. He sighed, walked to his bed, picked up a very shabby wooden windmill, and said, "Father, I did it. I successfully found a monk who is willing to pray for everyone's souls to be reborn. As for the murderer who summoned the spirit, he is dead, and we didn't even go to find him. Originally, I was ready to sacrifice my life, but you are right. Preparation can only be preparation in advance. I don't know how you are doing with your mother over there, but I hope everything is well with you." Soon, I will leave the village. I don't know where I will go, maybe to Suji-zen temple to become a wandering monk? I don't know. I hope you can bless me. Time passed quickly, and the night came as soon as it was said. The monk woke up from his meditation and stood up. Laka, Ji and Shen, who had been prepared, came to greet him. Laka asked, "Do you need anything else? I've heard that monks need some utensils to perform rituals for the dead." "No, nothing." The monk smiled peacefully. He came to the cemetery by the river as if he had predicted the future. The streams of energy began to gather around him, and Laka felt that the originally cool night was getting hotter and hotter. The monk's body radiated golden light, and with his appearance, he looked like a statue of a god or ancestor worshipped in a temple. He clasped his hands together and bowed his head devoutly. Some animals began to walk out of the nearby woods. Deer, wolves, squirrels, and even poisonous snakes crawled slowly, but they did not attack each other or cry restlessly. They stood there as if they were invited to come and watch. The branches of the nearby tree trunks were full of birds that Laka could not name, and the tree closest to them sprouted a new bud in an instant. The monk sighed sadly and took off his linen shirt. Innocent people who died because of others' mistakes, the dead who have been sleeping for a long time, I ask you to enter paradise and go to the next life. Racha felt his hair stand on end, and his hands and feet seemed to be numb and fixed in place. Because the souls of the other people in the village, the 63 dead people, were slowly standing up on their graves. Slowly emerging from the simple wooden tombstone, the illusory blue body, eyes full of resentment towards the living. But they did not start to move, but stood there stiffly. The sadness in the monk's eyes became more and more intense, and he even shed tears, as if he felt the same as their experience. "Although I cannot understand your pain, I am willing to bear it for you." He closed his eyes and shed tears, and the golden light on his body became stronger and stronger, and after reaching a certain extreme, it turned into white fluorescence, illuminating the night sky. Pink petals that came from nowhere wrapped around the riverside cemetery with the airflow. "I just hope you can let go of your hatred and move towards bliss," he continued, and at the same time, a vengeful spirit screamed, and Laka immediately recognized him. It was Lit, who lived at the end of the village. He rushed towards the monk, and his illusory body passed through him. The monk groaned, and a shallow white mark appeared on his throat. Laka suddenly felt a rush of tremors, and he trembled for his terrible guess. What if it was really what he thought? Lit died because his throat was cut. After passing through the monk, Lit slowly disappeared. His light blue spirit turned into a burst of white light and gradually floated into the sky. The next half an hour was the most difficult time in Laka's life so far. He watched the vengeful spirits of his fellow villagers pass through the monk's body one by one. He bore all the pain, whether it was a cut throat, a stabbing heart, or suffocation. No matter what pain he suffered, he never moved a step. He just stood there with his hands clasped together, and Ji and Shen had already turned their backs. They kept reciting scriptures in their mouths. Racha watched all this with awe, and he looked at the monk worriedly. He never knew that such a thing would happen during the salvation. What if he died because of his own fault? In that case, Racha would never forgive himself. But the monk did not die. After the 63 resentful souls disappeared, the monk opened his eyes. The white light slowly dissipated, and the petals fell to the ground. The animals all chirped, and then slowly disappeared into the woods, and even the snakes spit at him. Racha hurried to the monk's side and wanted to support him, but he was rejected. "No, Racha, don't touch me, otherwise it will hurt you," he said so. Racha saw that large patches of tattoos appeared on his chest and back at some point, and the mysterious patterns and ancient characters were intertwined to form a scroll. Just one look made Racha dizzy. The monk said to him, "The people in your village died innocently, and they are full of resentment because they have been dead for too long and have not been saved. I have no choice but to absorb the painful memories before their death and keep them in myself. Only in this way can they go to the next life." He put on his clothes, coughed twice, and his whole body became much weaker. "So, the matter is over. I will return to the Zen temple and say goodbye." After the monk finished speaking, he picked up the package and left without any nostalgia. It was not until his figure slowly disappeared that Laka, who was standing there, remembered that he had never asked Laka for anything in return. Chapter 241, The Golden Cup of Shurima. Feng, where did you go with my research materials again? Shenyan shouted loudly while sitting at his desk. Feng's cry came from downstairs, and Shenyan replied, "Don't play dumb. I saw you dragging them downstairs. Bring them back to me." Then, he heard the sound of running up the stairs. Feng, the female wolf, slowly appeared in front of his door. She stuck her head out, holding a stack of white papers in her mouth, and looked at him cautiously. Shenyan waved at her with amusement. "What are you thinking about? Why did you take my materials?" "Woo." "What?" "Woo." "No, Feng. If you want to go shopping, you can go by yourself. Everyone knows you anyway. But I don't have time to go out now." "Who did you learn this word from? You are not a dog." Feng ran away angrily and she didn't come back until the same night. The mage had not left his tower for a long time. There are countless rare things in the spiritual realm of Ionia. The newly compiled Spiritual Realm Biological Atlas alone has more than 1,000 pages. For creatures like mages who are extremely curious, this place is like an endless treasure trove. However, he cannot always immerse himself in his own research. There are still some things that need to be done. Although he is in Ionia, he is not completely ignorant of this world. The world he is in is called Valoran, which is composed of several lands, oceans, and several islands. Ionia is the easternmost land in the world. In addition, there are various countries such as Shurima, Demesa, and Noxus. Frankly speaking, he is not interested in secular countries, but there are obviously many secrets hidden in this world. The spirit of the dragon far away in the Sujizen temple told him that the world is not stable at present. Mortals are eager for war, and the ancient ascenders of Shurima are trying to bring their emperor back to the world. Because of this, they ignore the terrifying void monsters under the desert. The endless roars of the wronged souls on the Shadow Isles day and night trouble the dragon. If he could not leave Ionia too far, he would want to destroy them himself. The Protoss of Mount Targon are the most stable, but that's all they are. Shenlong was full of disdain when talking about the Protoss, saying that they only possess mortals, are arrogant and have no glory. Under the Sea of Bilgewater, there is an ancient god hidden. Generally speaking, this is a very dangerous world, but for Shenyan, everything is worth studying. Moreover, in addition to research, he has another reason to deal with these things. Do you need anything else? The shop owner nodded and said, "No, these are enough." "Feng, let's go." The owner watched the man leave and breathed a sigh of relief. He had never seen a traveler with such a sharp eye. He had been selling fake artifacts in Shurima for so many years, but the guy saw through the only real thing he mixed in 9 fakes at a glance, and he had to sell it. As a businessman, how could he not sell other people's things? Seeing that the great god finally left, he quickly packed up his things and prepared to close the stall. Walking in the market, Shenyan tossed the golden cup in his hand, thinking, he came to Shurima 2 days ago, and the void surging underground here interested him very much. The mage touched it slightly with his mental tentacles, and could only feel endless greed. This inevitably made him think of something else. He looked down at the golden cup in his hand. It was called a golden cup, but it was actually just a brass cup. The style was simple and there were no decorative patterns. But Shenyan could see that this thing should be some kind of ritual utensil. If it was infused with magic, it should become a different look. Is it related to those ascenders? In Shenlong's description, the ascenders were once extremely powerful. They were once comparable to real gods, but they fell into civil strife due to the death of their leader, and then disappeared due to the void invasion caused by something. They once resisted the void, but now no one knows their traces. Interesting. How did this special life form come into being? They were all human beings before, and evolved into ascendants through something called the sun disk. Is it some kind of energy aggregation ritual? What is the form of the ascendant? Is it a simple energy creature, or another form? He and Feng disappeared on the spot and came to the desert not far from the city. Shenyan poured a little magic power into the golden cup in his hand, and it immediately changed into another appearance. The edges that were originally mottled and peeling now became round and glittering with golden light. It was nearly twice as big. From a cup to a huge cup, 2 golden handles inlaid with rubies stood at both ends of the cup. In the center of the cup was a faint blue gem, which was flickering. The wizard put the cup on the ground, and he noticed that the breeze in the desert stopped. "It seems that I am lucky," he smiled. "The ascendant ceremony is worth studying. The same is true for this cup. Although the magic on it is not powerful, it can still work after such a long time. This has defeated many people. The power of that ancient empire may be glimpsed from here. However, the mystery of the cup has not been solved." "Okay, man, you are a cup. A ritual cup. You are gorgeous and beautifully decorated. There are many protective spells on you. Although they don't work on me, only certain people can activate you. However, the cup should contain something." "What are you used to contain?" Shenyan muttered to himself. Feng, who was lying on the ground beside him, whimpered twice, and a trace of helplessness appeared on her wolf face. Knowing that the mage was about to start again, he would start talking to himself endlessly once he fell into this research state. Magic? A light blue magic essence appeared out of thin air and was poured into the cup by him, but there was no reaction. "Okay, magic essence doesn't work. Could it be blood? Ah, it's possible. The legend of the Holy Grail," he muttered to himself, took out a test tube from his pocket dimension, poured out the blood with fine lightning inside, and poured it into the golden cup, but there was still no reaction. "So you need a specific bloodline to activate it." "Very good. It's quite challenging. Oh, wait, I seem to have missed something." Shenyan picked up the cup, and the blood inside disappeared. He turned the two handles, changing from vertical to horizontal, and then two small holes opened at the bottom of the cup. The sunlight shone into the golden cup and was then reflected out. "Interesting puzzle," he laughed, and the wind hummed again beside him. Yes. Of course I could use magic to find out the secret from the beginning, but that would not be fun." "Feng, we have to learn to have some fun for ourselves." Chapter 242 Nasus. The yellow sand of Shurma carries the weight of history, which is rare. The history of this place is so ancient that even the sand that can be seen everywhere has a magical aura. Shenyan put his hands behind his back, and Feng followed him. They quickly passed through the sand, as fast as ghosts. He stopped at a certain place, lowered his head, and looked at the building with only a small corner exposed under his feet. The mage nodded. "It looks like we have arrived." He snapped his fingers. The yellow sand dispersed, and the giant tower that had been buried underground for thousands of years rose out of thin air. The yellow sand shook off, and the earth trembled. Finally, when the smoke and dust dissipated, what appeared in front of him and Feng was a giant tower that was dilapidated but still glorious. Shenyan whistled, and he was obviously in a very happy mood. However, now was not the time to enter the tower. He took out the golden cup. "Okay, let's continue solving the puzzle." "Why are you looking at me like that?" Feng turned his head and the mage rolled his eyes. "Don't think I can fool you this time. If you complain again, you will have nothing to eat tonight." Feng, after speaking, he raised the golden cup, and the fierce sunlight of Shurima shone on the cup. From the two small holes at the bottom of the cup, the giant tower began to vibrate, resonating with the magic in the air. Stars of magical fluorescence emanated from the cup, and a woman appeared in front of Shenyan. It is not quite accurate to say that she is a woman. In the spirit of seeking truth from facts, she is just an illusory spirit and has no self-awareness. The woman is dressed in armor and holding a huge sword in her hand. Her voice was intermittent, as if it was too old, and the mage could only hear 4 words, "Royal Descendant." After speaking, she disappeared. So the next step is to find this royal descendant. We can put this question aside for now. Shenyan turned his head and a black shadow slowly walked out of the yellow sand. He had a dog-headed body and a human body, holding a strange weapon in his hand. It was called a walking stick, but it was too big and had an axe-like structure. But it didn't look like an axe. The tall dog-headed man spoke, his voice low and hoarse. "Stranger, did you make the giant tower rise?" The mage did not answer. He stared at the dog-headed man with strange eyes, which made him feel offended. The dog-headed man showed his sharp teeth and struck the soft sand hard with the scepter in his hand. The earth trembled, and his voice became like a loud bell, echoing in the desert. "Answer my question, stranger, otherwise you will get the wrath of Nasus." The mage still did not answer. His black pupils were replaced by a bright blue light, and Shenyan laughed excitedly. I must admit that no matter who created you, he is a genius. You, what? Nasus waved the scepter in his hand angrily, wanting to give this mortal with a weird personality a taste of pain. He had seen too many people who came to Sherma and tried to desecrate their history and steal their artifacts. This one was special because he activated the giant tower, but he was just a mortal. But when he wanted to make the sand under the mortal's feet rise and surround him, he found that he could no longer drive the sand. Don't be so irritable. I have no ill will towards you. Maybe you will have to thank me in the future. Shenyan shrugged, threw the golden cup in his hand to Nasus's feet, and then said, out of courtesy, I don't want to look through your memories. So, do you mind telling me directly what the ascension ceremony is? Wishful thinking. Nasus roared angrily. Although he could no longer control the sand, he was still an ascender, a demigod. He could still control death. He moved his fingers, and a strange fragrance came. The flower of death appeared out of thin air behind him and slowly bloomed. But the most terrible power that Nasus possessed was useless to the mortal in front of him. Is he really immortal? Nasus began to laugh at his own recklessness, cursing himself in his heart. You have been lost for too long. Even your brain has been thrown in the desert. He is obviously not immortal. Maybe one of those protoss. Oh, you can also control death. Let me see. Corrosion, accelerated aging, disease. Nice curse. He casually told the truth about the power that Nasus was driving, which made him feel even more shocked. The dog-headed man clenched the scepter in his hand. If it was not necessary, he would not use this power again. But now it seemed that he had to use it, just as he was about to summon the soul flame and yellow sand to add to himself as before. The mage and the wolf that was not afraid of him slowly disappeared, leaving only a sentence that echoed in the desert. I don't want to be forced to kill you, my friend. Nasus stood there. He didn't know what to do. All kinds of questions swirled in his mind, and in the end, he just walked into the giant tower that had just risen silently. The ascendants must go through the ritual of the sun disk before they can ascend. They will become extremely powerful, long-lived, and possess special powers. The wizard was sitting on a chair, with a dot of light floating in front of him. The wizard was speaking to it and recording something. There is reason to believe that there are other things in this process that I don't understand. Unfortunately, I can't directly go back in time on such a large scale. That would cause reality to collapse. But for now, I can focus on the Ascenders. After mastering their secrets, maybe I can find some other fun for myself. Ascended Gerald. It sounds good, but I don't know if that guy is willing. The void hidden under the desert is a problem. It's pure malice and greed, which is rare. Each of their creations meets the definition of something from the other world, but there is one difference. They belong to this universe, so they don't come from the endless sea of stars. Interesting. Could it be that something from outside came here and gave birth to offspring? Just now, the thing under the sea of Bilgewater sent me another communication request, but I don't really want to deal with her at the moment. Someday, find time to go to the Shadow Isles. I'm also interested in the curses there. Maybe it will expand my curse spells. Ha, what am I talking about? I never curse others. He stroked Feng's furry head and continued, as for the investigation of those ancient demons, it can also come to an end. According to books, legends and some things I have explored, they are just the embodiment of ancient malice, not the kind of demons I know, but the threat is still great. Of course, there is no threat to me. Maybe we can wait until Shen and Ji grow up and let them deal with it. I thought the situation in this world was not complicated, but I didn't expect that reality still taught me a lesson. It seems that the people of Lordran will have to wait for a while to move to their new home. Feng touched his palm, and the mage looked down and saw that she was looking at him with eager eyes. Okay, I know you are hungry. He took out a dragon heart and put it on the ground. Feng's transformation was almost completed. If nothing unexpected happens, she will become the world's first flying wolf. Chapter 243 Void. In fact, it might not be as simple as being able to fly. The transformation of the wind was carried out step by step. The mage had never done a transformation that took so long and was so subtle before. This matter seemed quite interesting to him. The wind knew this, but she didn't know the impact it would have on her. The wolf might just feel that he was eating better and his appetite was getting bigger. Looking at the wind lion on the ground eating the pot of dragon heart, Shenyan smiled softly. He began to understand some of the mentality of the Ancient One and Zisot. Sometimes, you have to find some fun for yourself. The desert will devour you. Yes, the desert will devour you. Everyone in Sherman knows this, but few people have really seen that scene. Hornby is one of them. He is one of the few people who have faced that scene and can come back alive to continue to tell about his experience. He lost his right leg, which is basically equivalent to a death sentence in Shurima, but Hornby is good at speaking, so he simply traveled in taverns everywhere and became a bard. His experience of surviving the catastrophe and the local legends of Shurima were quite popular in the tavern, which made Hornby's life not so difficult. At least he could earn money and support his family. Isn't it enough to have a family with only one person? Today was the same. He told stories in the tavern. The creature had a purple shell, and its 6 ugly compound eyes stared at me in the dark. I could see the malice in the beast's eyes. I had no choice but to run away. In the tavern, Hornby sat on the podium and told this story, and the people below drank and listened attentively. A man shouted, "Hey, bard, is that thing big?" "Very big, as big as a calf, and there are so many of them, and they can fly." My leg was torn off by them flying out of the darkness. In the yellow sand, I never thought their claws were so sharp. Another person said, "Oh my god, this is too scary." "I hope you are just telling a story," Hornby replied. "Sir, as long as you don't get close to that area, I believe this will only be a story to you." "Say it again, bard, tell me where that place is again." "Farage. Remember, sir, never get close to that place, especially at night," Hornby said solemnly. He didn't know if these drunken men would take his terrible story seriously, but he didn't want to see anyone being swallowed by those things again. The wizard sat in the stinky tavern, with the wind lying at his feet. In fact, the investigation of local customs and habits in various places can be regarded as one of his research directions. These similar but different places between the worlds are very interesting. This bard was a pleasant surprise. He had the smell of those things on him. The mage thought that he would be corrupted like all the mortals who had come into contact with the things of the other world, and therefore had their smell on him. Unexpectedly, this man was unexpectedly lucky. Not only was he sane, but he could also make a living by relying on his past misfortunes. Although he might not want to make a living this way at all, but this is still a problem worth noting. In his vision, there was a wisp of erratic purple light on the bard, flying up and down around his body. This was obviously a hunting mark, and the mage was a little confused. Generally speaking, the things of the other world will not let go of any object that can be eaten unless you're so big that they can't even eat you for a while. They will drag you to the other side of the starry sky and slowly share your food. But what ability does this mortal have? Can he let the void temporarily let him go and just make another mark? Shenyan suddenly realized that his understanding of the void might be wrong. The things of the other world may be similar to the void, but they are definitely not the same thing. The void may have wisdom, rather than being a purely irrational creature like the things in the other world. His expression became serious. If his guess was true, then the void must be completely eliminated. Taking a last look at the bard, the mage stretched out his hand to remove the breath from his body, just like waving his hand to flick away the dust in front of him. In the next moment, he had arrived at Farage, the place the bard mentioned. He lowered his head and said to Feng, "You have to go back first, Feng." The latter responded with a puzzled cry. Shenyan said patiently, "No. What I am going to do next is very dangerous. Although I can save you even if you are corrupted, but go back." Feng did not insist anymore. She let the mage send her back to the mage tower in Ionia. Ji and Shen were practicing there. The night sky of Shurima is very beautiful, different from that of Ionia. There are no plants and buildings blocking it, and the stars seem to be right in front of you. There was nothing else between him and the starry sky. The mage slowly floated up. His black robe began to flutter, and the red light in his eyes ignited again. The bard was right. There was indeed something terrible hidden under the desert. He stretched out his hand towards the sky. The stars slowly dispersed under his will, and then overlapped together. The forbidden spells from the ancient scrolls saw the light of day again today. The stars have returned to their positions. The simple and difficult language came out of his mouth, and huge starlight fell from the sky and shone on the mage. A huge and bright star appeared out of thin air in the night sky of Shurima, emitting a bright blue light, making the night as bright as day. The blue light replaced the red magic in his eyes. The mage lowered his head, looked at the desert surface that had begun to be restless, and waved his hand. The starlight was bright, pure destruction melted the yellow sand on the surface of the desert, and the storm began to gather, and then dissipated in the next moment. No creature could survive in the face of such great power, except Shenyan. The surface of the far Age-side desert completely disappeared, leaving only a huge circular pit that was at least several hundred meters deep. There was a blue flame burning in it. A pieced-together creature slowly climbed up from the pit. It was nothing more than a description, because any mortal would lose his mind at the first sight of that thing. Its shell emitted a bright purple light, and it stood up on two limbs, roaring at Shenyan in the sky, his voice hoarse and unpleasant. The mage's heart sank, not because of this monster. The spell he just used would be absolutely destructive to ordinary things in the other world, but for the void. They have actually begun to adapt. Yes, he was not wrong. The purple light on the chitinous shell of the creature that was as huge as a tall building had begun to turn into blue light. Not only did it survive the blow, it even adapted directly in such a short time. Sorry for being late, there are still 4 more to come. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 244, Void. Nasus stood solemnly on the top of the tower. This giant tower that had been sleeping in the desert for hundreds of years was not unfamiliar to him. In ancient times, the ancient Shurima Empire would erect such a tower after conquering a region as a proof and as a kind of safety measure. Powerful magic would be cast on it and it would be heavily guarded. There were also countless mages who took turns every year to provide magic power for the magic on the tower. This giant tower was a proof of the empire's military power. However, now, the tower is still intact, but the magic has long been ineffective. In fact, seeing that the tower is still intact is enough to surprise Nasus. He looked at the huge blue star in front of him, and the dog-headed man's face was nothing but serious. Was it the work of the Protoss? How dare they appear on the land of Shurima again? He clenched the scepter in his hand, and anger grew uncontrollably in his heart. The first decline of the Shurima Empire was due to the invasion of the Void, and the first appearance of that abomination in the world was because of them. At that time, the development of Shurima gradually reached its peak under the leadership of Queen Setaka, and they expanded their territory bit by bit. Led by the god warriors and Setaka, the empire was unstoppable, and at one point it controlled most of the world. But when they encountered Icathia, everything changed. The Icathians naturally did not want to be conquered, and Nasus understood that. But they were bewitched by the Protoss, and they found it from nowhere, the embodiment of greed outside of Valoran, pure evil, the Void. When the mad Icathians unleashed the Void, the nation was destroyed in an instant. Shurima would not sit idly by, and they fought the Void in Icathia for years. Mortals had no power to resist such a force beyond their understanding, so it was up to the god warriors, the Ascended, to fight. In that great battle, Shurima won, but also lost. The reason was simple. Queen Setaka, the head of the Ascended, died. This was a fatal blow to the empire, and the leader of the throne that the Ascended swore to defend fell. The threat of the Void was no longer imminent. Nasus had looked up information about this in the Great Library of the Empire. The few remaining fragments were all very secretive about this matter. From those few words, Nasus learned a truth that he could not believe. The Ascended started a civil war that swept across the entire continent and affected all mortals, and thus earned the derogatory name, Darkin. This may be human nature, but Nasus did not want to believe it. They had obtained such noble and powerful power, and they should lead the mortals forward. But his words could not change the history of thousands of years ago. At that time, The civil war among the Ascended destroyed everything, and the Empire collapsed in an instant. And the Protoss took action again. They handed over the cunning tricks of the mortals and imprisoned the remaining Ascended. The Empire was silent for hundreds of years. Fortunately, the bloodline of Queen Setaka did not disappoint her country. Shurima stood up again but fell apart in a betrayal. Recalling this painful past, the dog-headed man's eyes inevitably flashed a trace of sadness. He jumped down from the 100-meter-high tower and landed lightly on the sand. He walked slowly towards the area where the starlight fell. He had to go to the scene. Shurima had weakened to this point. He might be the only remaining god warrior, even if no one believed in him anymore and the empire he fought for had disappeared. But this was still Shurima. Shenyan basically didn't care about other things after entering the working state. This was a secret that was not a secret. Both Strange and Tony knew about this, and they tried not to disturb the wizard when he entered this state. After all, he looked really scary at that time. He was flying 100 meters high at this time, overlooking the monster under his feet that was roaring at him. With a light touch of his fingers, countless yellow sand flew up from the ground and formed a huge sword blade in front of him. Those tiny sands vibrated wildly at a frequency, and anything that stood in front of this sword would be destroyed in an instant. That monster was no exception. Its chitinous shell was easily cut open, and no blood flowed out. Instead, pure purple energy leaked out. They flowed to the ground, and in the blink of an eye, they formed a number of round purple egg pods gathered together. Shenyan's expression became even more gloomy. The yellow sand giant sword pierced through the monster's body and nailed it firmly to the ground. His magic power turned into a huge crimson chain, binding the monster up and making it unable to move. The mage slowly landed on the ground. He looked at the eggs that were beating rapidly in tens of seconds, and shook his head in disgust. He waved his hand to destroy some, leaving only one. Record. It grows very fast and is adaptable to any environment. He looked at the egg, and the monster next to him cried out. Shenyan glanced at it, clenched his right fist, and the space around him shattered. A black hole appeared in the original place and swallowed the monster in. He began to wait. After a minute, the egg's beating reached a certain extreme. With a puff, a bug the size of a human palm crawled out of it. Its purple chitinous shell is exactly the same as that of the monster. It has 6 compound eyes on the top of its head, 3 pairs of claws and a pair of sharp blades. Record. It has a good killing power against mortals just after birth. The creature slowly floated up, its mouth opened, and it uttered a sharp cry towards the mage. The mental tentacles held it up and turned it over and over. Shenyan controlled the tentacles to tear off one of its claws, and the creature did not show any pain. Record. I think we can conclude that this thing is a pure biological weapon. He suddenly sighed. I didn't expect that I would have to deal with insects again. Damn it. The small void creature was casually disintegrated into pieces by his magic power. The deep pit was still burning with blue flames. The mage clasped his hands together and his magic power vibrated, as if time was going backwards. Sand appeared from nowhere and buried the place again. He laid more than 10 large purification spells and warning spells. If those things appeared here again, the mage would get the news immediately. After doing all this, he turned his head and saw a dog-headed man walking slowly towards him in the yellow sand not far away. This scene that seemed like deja vu made Shenyan shake his head and said, "What a coincidence. It's so late. Are you not sleeping?" Chapter 245 Jax. Sir, who are you? Who knows? How about you guess? I let you watch the whole movie not far away. Did you enjoy watching the free movie? Movie? What is that? Ah, I forgot you don't have such a thing here. Never mind. The mage waved his hand and said to the tall dog-headed man, if you have nothing else to do, I will leave. There are more places where the void has invaded. Wait, Nasus suddenly said, if you don't mind, please let me go with you. No, you will get in the way. The mage rejected him coldly, and his speed made Nasus pause. I am an ascender, sir. I have the ability to protect myself. Yes, but you are still in the way. It makes no difference to me whether you are an ascender or a mortal, my friend. I advise you to go home and sleep early, if you have time. After saying this, he flew away and went to the next place. If he was fast, he might be able to find a place to eat some Shurima specialties at sunrise. Nasus stood still, not angry at the mage's harsh words. He half knelt and scooped up a handful of sand. The sand of Shurima was an extension of his arms, his eyes and ears. The sand whispered to each other, and he saw what happened here. After a moment, he slowly stood up. He looked up at the sky, and the mage had long disappeared. He began to think, he is much stronger than me, and may even be stronger than those Protoss. But he is obviously not a Protoss. Unable to come to a conclusion, Nasus put the question aside for the time being and left. Jax reached into his cloak and pulled out a boiled egg. He knocked the boiled egg on the stone under him, and then slowly peeled the eggshell until there was no more debris on the surface of the egg. He lifted the corner of his mask and took a bite of the egg. The egg always tasted so good. How much did he eat? He couldn't remember. Jax chewed the egg slowly. A child came in front of him. He looked at Jax timidly and didn't speak. Jax swallowed the egg in his mouth and took out a boiled egg from his pocket. He said to the child, "Would you like one?" The child shook her head. "Well, girl, what do you want from me?" Seeing that she didn't want to eat, Jax took back the egg. He ate the one he had peeled earlier and waited patiently for the girl's question. The child was silent for a long time, and Jax could see her entanglement. Fortunately, she finally spoke. "Sir, I want to ask you for a favor." "Tell me." "I want you to kill someone for me." Jax's expression under the mask became serious. How old was she? 10 years old? Such a young child asked him to kill someone? Not to mention that Jax was not a killer, but the child's words inevitably surprised him. "How old are you, girl?" The girl bit her lower lip and looked at him stubbornly. "I'm 8 years old." "Sir, age is not a problem. I have money. I want you to kill someone for me." Instead of rushing to refuse her, Jax pondered for a while and said, "Why do you want me to kill someone for you?" The girl pointed to the long-handled weapon on his knees. It was a lamppost with a soft light shining at the top. "I saw you beat those hooligans with this thing. If you can do it with this, you must be very good at killing." Jax laughed. His laughter was very dull. "Don't change the subject. Such compliments are useless to me. You have to tell me why you want me to kill someone for you and who to kill. Only then will I consider it." He deliberately made the matter very ambiguous, pretending that he might agree to her. The girl really took the bait. Her expression changed, and Jax recognized that expression. It was the expression of an avenger. There was nothing but anger and sadness in her eyes, and her face was covered with clouds. Such a sad face appeared on a child. "Okay, I'll tell you. The man I want you to kill is called Sezbel. He lives in a villa in the market. You can see it when you pass this intersection. His house is very impressive. The reason why I want you to kill him for me is because he did evil things to me and my family. Here it comes." Jax slightly relaxed his shoulder muscles. Since his hometown was destroyed, Jax began to wander. He traveled all over the world, even to places outside the map. Thanks to the treasure and the lamppost in his hand, Jax's life was extended a lot. His wandering was purposeful, but it was obvious that it could not be completed at present. After a lot of twists and turns, he returned to Shurima. Jax had killed many people. He had killed good people, bad people, Vastaya people, and Freljord people. Some of them were deliberately murdered in cold blood because they deserved it. Those pathetic beasts did not deserve to live, but some of them were not what he meant to do. He thought of the lone traveler he met half a year ago. He went to Mount Targon alone. He fell ill on the way and begged Jax to kill him. Jax granted his wish. "What did he do?" Jax asked. "My father worked for him. Half a year ago, my father escorted his caravan and did the work of guard, but he never came back. He neither gave us an explanation nor compensation. My mother went to his house to ask for an explanation, but was beaten and paralyzed. He even said that no one was allowed to help us, otherwise they would be in trouble." Ah, the local bully. But few people are so evil. Jax has seen many evil people. Most of them still have a bottom line. Only those who are not worthy of being called human beings will lose their conscience like this. However, there are many doubts about this matter. It needs to be investigated. If what the girl said is true, then his lamppost may be stained with blood again. The girl had tears in her eyes and her voice began to tremble. "This is my father's legacy." She took out a purse from her arms. Jax could see that there must be a lot of money in it. The girl raised her head stubbornly to prevent her tears from falling. She took a deep breath and said, "I don't know if this is enough, but I beg you to promise me." Jax stood up, took the purse and tossed it in his hands. He opened the purse and took out 3 copper coins, which was exactly the price of 3 boiled eggs tomorrow. Then he returned the purse to the girl, took the lamppost and walked away, leaving only one sentence. "I will go find him, but you gave too much money, child. Now hurry home." Chapter 246. An unknown omen. The man in front of him stumbled toward him with a miniature sword, and Jax was disappointed, even though he had expected it. One of the reasons he traveled the world was to find warriors strong enough to fight the void with him. With that in mind, he was disappointed with the way some people used weapons. Jax leaned slightly, arced the lamppost in his hand in the air, and hit the man on the back of the head with a backhand, knocking him away. His body fell to the ground and rolled a few times, then stopped moving. The courtyard of the villa was full of fallen people, and Jax restrained himself and did not kill anyone. The villain that the girl mentioned, Seth Billy, stood across from him now, huddled behind his last guard who was still standing and shivered. "Before you rush at me, I'll give you a piece of advice. Relax your shoulders and don't hold the miniature sword so hard. You can hurt yourself if you swing the sword too hard," Jax said kindly to the guard. But he didn't do as Jax said, and instead became more nervous. He roared, as if to boost his courage, and then rushed towards Jax. Courage is commendable, but courage alone is not enough. Jax didn't even bother to swing the lamppost. He squatted down and knocked the guard to the ground with a sweeping kick. Then he kicked him in the head, knocking the guy unconscious. "Now, let's talk. What's your name?" "Sezbil, right?" The man didn't answer. Jax scratched his head. He wanted to speak again, but the guy's next move caught him off guard. Sezbil picked up his sword and pointed it at his neck with fear on his face. "You are sent by them." "Tell them." "I won't tell them anything." "No, don't even think about it." Jax's pupils under the mask suddenly shrank, and he threw the lamppost in his hand, accurately hitting Sezbil's right wrist, causing the sword in his hand to fall to the ground. Sezbil looked up and saw Jax was in front of him. Bang! When he woke up again, he was tied up. The strange masked man leaned against the wall of his house, peeling an egg nonchalantly. "Awake? Very good. Let's talk about what you did to the child." "Child? What child?" "A girl. Her father was a caravan guard here, and died half a year ago." "How is it? Do you remember him?" "Are you talking about Jabu?" Sezbil trembled. "Yes." "And you bullied his family who came to ask for an explanation, and beat his wife to paralysis?" Jax stopped talking silently. He noticed that Sezbil's expression was a little strange. He smiled tremblingly. "Sir, Jabu has no wife and no daughter." "What are you talking about?" Jax frowned. He didn't know what was wrong with this man. Crazy? Did he think he would believe such a clumsy lie? Sethbul trembled and cried, "I didn't lie to you. He really has no wife or daughter. He is indeed dead, but I have compensated his mother." "How did he die?" "Killed by sand bandits. My caravan was killed in that attack, but I have compensated him. I swear to the yellow sand." Things began to get weird. Jax squatted down, stretched out his right fist, and punched the wall behind Sethbul's head. Feeling the force, Sethbul swallowed his saliva. Jax said calmly, "Do you know what this is?" "This is a fist," Sethbul answered carefully. "Yes, if you lie, it will become a fist that hits your face and body. Understand? I really didn't lie." "If you don't believe me, you can ask his mother yourself." "Where does she live?" "Forget it. Get up." Jax pulled him up from the ground, loosened the rope that tied him, and said, "Take me there." Sethbul did not refuse, or rather, he had no right to refuse. Jab's mother lived at the other end of town, a very large town. She lived in a shanty town, and Sethbul knocked on the door. Jax saw an old woman coming out. She was not that old, but her white hair would make people misjudge her age. "Ah, Lord Sezbil." Jab's mother bowed to him quickly, and then asked, "What do you want?" "Yes, that's right, madam. Jab is not married, right?" Sezbil first glanced at Jax beside him, and then asked carefully, "No. Why do you ask this question?" Jab's mother looked a little confused and a little angry at the same time, but she still didn't show it. "Look, what I said is." Jax pushed him aside and looked at the old woman. He asked, "Your son Jab, He was the guard of this caravan, and he died in half a year, right? Yes, sir. What's wrong? Jax took a deep breath, and then said, No, nothing. Sorry to bother you. Goodbye. He pulled Sezbel away and pulled him into a dark alley. Jax asked, What about those people you mentioned before? Sezbel said cautiously, They are from Thebes, not far from here, and they want me to send something to other places. But I didn't want to send that thing, so they kept sending people to harass me. Otherwise, why do you think I hired so many guards? What is it? I don't know, but I have seen it. It is purple and looks like an egg. It is too weird. I can't send such a thing to ruin my reputation. A stabbing pain circled in his mind, and Jax couldn't help but take a deep breath. He forced himself to calm down, and then asked, Is it still beating, like a heartbeat? Yes. How do you know? Akathia swears. It's okay, you can go back. Just like that, leaving him here, Jax turned around and left. He returned to the stone where he had been, and the girl had disappeared. Asking the residents here did not get a definite answer. A feeling of being shrouded in conspiracy made him involuntarily tighten the lamppost in his hand. He ran to Sethbel's house again. The guy was distributing rewards to the guards with a distressed look on his face. When he saw him coming, the distress on his face turned into despair. Can't you just let me go? I haven't offended you in any way. Relax. I just came back to ask a question. What? Sethbel just wanted to send this plague god away as soon as possible. Do you know where those people who asked you to deliver things are? I owe one more chapter, and I will return it tomorrow. I went to bed early today. I wrote until 4 in the morning the past 2 days, which was a bit tormenting for me. Chapter 247, What the Grilled Scarab and the Beauty Have in Common. Sezbel did not offend him. Walking on the road outside the city, Jax smiled when he thought of this sentence. What the girl said was not true. He began to wonder if he was controlled by some kind of magic. How could he trust others so easily? Even if the object was a child begging him, he should be vigilant about everything. Merchants riding horses can be seen on the road. The road environment in Shurma is not very safe, to be precise. It is extremely dangerous. This land has not seen a decent monarch since the fall of the ancient Shurma Empire. If people want to travel between two cities, they often need a large group of guards and reliable guides. Of course, unless you don't need safety, you can also go on foot, but the consequence of doing so is that you are likely to be robbed and thrown by sand bandits on the road, eaten by dangerous creatures that drilled out from nowhere under the desert, or lost. Sandstorms. There are many ways to die. You can choose one. But these things have nothing to do with Jax. He has been wandering in Valoran for too long, especially in Shurma. He knew this place as well as the 108 styles of his lamppost. It took him half a day to reach the endless plains of Farajsai. This is a wilderness of hundreds of square kilometers that has devoured countless lives in the past few hundred years. A few people tried to cross the plains instead of taking a detour, but they never came back. Even if the endless heat and lack of water did not take their lives, the dangerous beasts and savage bandits that roamed in the night would not let them go. Jax had just arrived in Farajsai when he felt a heart-pounding magical fluctuation. He was very familiar with magic. Akathia was founded on magic, and the status of magicians was very high. However, the magical fluctuations he felt from the air above the wasteland were nothing but pure destruction. What kind of magic was this? Jax held the lamppost tightly in his hand. If he wanted to reach the garden city as quickly as possible, he had to cross the endless plains. The threat of the void was imminent, and he didn't know who would be crazy enough to transport their eggs. But anything that has anything to do with the void is not good. With no other choice, he headed towards the plain. The further he went, the more he could feel the breathtaking pressure of magic. The air became sticky, and Jax's steps began to be deep and shallow, which was unacceptable for a warrior. Anyone who has received training knows that you can only use the weapon in your hand to hit others when you are standing firmly. But he couldn't keep his body steady, and Jax inserted the lamppost in his hand into the yellow sand. He took a deep breath, sat cross-legged, and a thin layer of yellow shield began to emerge on the surface of his body. After he fully adapted to the strange environment here due to the riot of magic, he continued to walk. But the strange thing is that apart from the pressure of magic, There is nothing worth noting on the yellow sand. This place is as desolate and uninhabited as ever. Occasionally, a few lizards crawled by, but they soon disappeared in the desert. What happened here? With such questions, he gradually crossed the endless plain. The things on the plate in front of the wizard were 2 roasted black beetles. They were not cute. Even if they were cute when they were alive, they would become ugly after being roasted by the flames for 15 minutes. Moreover, their thick limbs and elytra on their backs made them completely uncute, not to mention their hideous mouth parts. The wizard looked up at the waiter who served him the food and asked, "Is this your specialty?" The waiter answered proudly, "You are a traveler, right? This is a special delicacy of the Garden City. Grilled scarabs. You will know once you take a bite." Shenyan lowered his head and looked at the beetle that was almost half the size of his palm, and said, "Ah, I don't reject these special foods, but you have to at least tell me how to eat them." "Easy." The waiter raised his hand and gestured to him. "You just need to pick up its wings. Yes, hold it like this, then touch their backs with your index finger. Be careful, it may be very hot." "Do you feel the slightly soft gap? Then what? Open it." Shenyan did as he was told. There is a soft gap on the carapace of the beetle. I don't know if they are born like this or if they have been specially processed in the kitchen. In short, after the carapace was opened, the wizard saw golden tender meat, exuding a strange aroma. The waiter smiled and brought him a small dish of dipping sauce, saying, "If you are not afraid of spicy food, you can eat it with this." Shenyan put his fingers into a pointed shape on the table. He looked at the beetle, hesitated for a while, and then picked up the fork beside him and took a bite. How to describe this taste? It's like a cow and a fish got drunk one night, and then they had such a child. This child is not an easy lamb to deal with, and the meat inherits the best parts of its fictitious parents. The mage forked out another piece of meat. He carefully looked at the golden tender meat, and then swallowed it in one bite. Sometimes, appearance has nothing to do with the inner heart. This sentence applies not only to this beetle, but also to the woman who just pushed the door in. She was wearing a silk robe, and many people looked away at the first sight of this dress. I dare not look at her again. In Shurima, many times, being able to wear silk clothes means a lot. And she also enjoys this feeling, raising her head proudly and walking towards the bar. She is beautiful, and it is not an exaggeration. She had wheat-colored skin and wore a veil, revealing only a pair of beautiful eyes. A gold ring was worn on her ankle, decorated with exaggerated lines. From any angle, she should be a beauty. And the thin silk robe also increased her charm to some extent. The looming only made people want to see those hidden things more, not to mention that her beautiful curves could not be hidden. It was a pity. The wizard stood up. He had already eaten the first beetle. He did not forget to pick up the second one and put it in his pocket dimension. He paid for it, so he had to take it away. He walked straight to the woman, and she obviously noticed this handsome oriental face. Her eyes narrowed into a crescent shape, and she stretched out her hands to greet the wizard, but was slapped in the face by Shenyan the next second. The tavern fell silent. Chapter 248. The number of people killed has nothing to do with moral bottom line. Before she could react, Shenyan kicked her again. Please note that the mages from Kamartaj are not the pitiful and fragile ones with low defense and only 200 horsepower that people think of. They will die on the spot if they are hit by a monster. They pay great attention to training, especially Shenyan, who was very crazy and set up a lot of permanent protective magic circles on himself. This also caused the woman to be kicked out, and she rolled out of the door she came in. It was so embarrassing. Silk clothes are beautiful, but there are other problems. At this time, her clothes were covered with dust due to rolling on the ground for several times, and some places were torn, revealing her beautiful spring. Passers-by looked at this scene with astonished eyes, and the mage walked out of the door of the tavern. The woman lying on the ground climbed up in a rage, pointing at the mage, and before she could utter the local Shurma curse words that were ready to be uttered, she was slapped again. "You, Pa!" She covered her face with disbelief. Some passers-by recognized her, and they left the scene quickly, not wanting to get into trouble. The woman screamed hysterically, but she caught a glimpse of the mage's slowly raised right hand from the corner of her eye, and immediately shut her mouth. Her face was now swollen like a pig's head, and the burning pain was intertwined with the humiliation and confusion in her heart. She couldn't help but shed tears. "Don't cry, it's as if I did something I shouldn't do to you." Shenyan put down his hand, and he tilted his head. "Why don't we talk about your real age?" The woman's pupils shrank suddenly, and before she could speak, the mage slowly interrupted her. "How long have you lived?" "I shouldn't ask that. It's not very rigorous. I should ask, how many people have you eaten?" As his voice fell, the woman's bones suddenly twisted. The pale bone stumps penetrated her body, and the muscles and skin began to melt inch by inch until she turned into a pool of meat mud, with only a head left standing. The mage raised his finger, and a golden ring flew out of the meat mud. That was the thing she had worn on her ankle before. At this time, it was stained with blood and was emitting a strange light under the sunlight of Shurma. Shenyan sighed. "Evil weapon. It's the same old thing that cannibalizes people to prolong life." "Where did you find this thing?" The woman's head opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but it suddenly swelled up in the next moment. Shenyan narrowed his eyes and shook his fingers. "I haven't finished asking questions yet." "Do you understand what first come first served means?" An old male voice replaced her original voice. A second mouth grew out of her pale face, grinning with yellow teeth, and said to the mage, "Young man, don't think that you can snap." The mage snapped his fingers. He stood up and moved away from the street a little. Then, a meteor streaked across, and an old man in a black robe fell to the ground. He looked miserable. "Please forgive me. I don't want to describe it too much." You can imagine the jelly that was crushed by stepping on it and the slime that was smashed by the blender. But even so, he is still alive. "Why do you have to be so mean? You will die if you don't say a few harsh words, right?" "Forget it. You are going to die anyway. Do you want to make a deal with me? Maybe I will consider letting you die quickly," Shenyan said with a smile. A new mouth grew on the broken half of his head, and it made a painful sound. Shenyan looked up at the residents who were gathering around to watch the excitement and snapped his fingers, letting them go, and erased this memory. He waited patiently for a while until the old man finally finished his psychological construction. When he wanted to speak, Shenyan turned around and left, leaving only one sentence and a spell to cover up the old man's existence. He would die very long and painfully, and there would be no chance of resurrection. "Sorry, I was kidding." "You just wait there to die slowly. No one will notice you. So, if you want to move to a mortal, you can save it." He left this abomination there to die. The mages seemed careless and treated them in a playful manner, but in fact, they had nothing but cold anger in their hearts. Evil weapon. This is not a good word. Kamartaj has a special course that talks about the harm of this kind of thing to the human world. It is impossible to know who made the first evil weapon, but the most intuitive understanding of the mages about evil weapons is that they are extremely evil. You cannot destroy an own evil weapon by any means. Even if you throw it into another space and exile it for thousands of years, it will eventually return to the human world and look for a host. The only reliable countermeasure is to seal and suppress it, but the sealer himself will also be at risk of being corrupted. Therefore, it is often necessary to seal alternately. Even so, many people have been corrupted in 100 years of responsibility. This is the first time Shenyan has seen an evil weapon in other worlds. At first glance, he directly determined what this thing is. The reason is that any mage will never forget their special smell after seeing an evil weapon. You can understand it as a more terrifying coriander smell. And the mage happens to hate coriander very much, and also hates evil weapons very much. He walked on the road, playing with the golden ring in his hand. The thing made a buzzing sound, and some shadows flashed faintly on the exaggerated patterns. Countless victims screamed and wailed at Shenyan, telling the mage all the sufferings they had suffered in their lives, and Shenyan just endured it all with a blank expression. There was no other way. If you want to free these poor souls from the evil weapon, someone must bear their pain. This is also one of the disgusting points of the evil weapon. They will bind the soul of the victim. The mage exhaled until the soul of the last victim slowly dissipated. This was nothing to him, but watching his own kind being eaten like this, and not even having peace after death, he couldn't help but feel some emotions in his heart. At this moment, Shenyan sneered. He knew some of his character flaws, and he also knew that he was an out-and-out bastard in the eyes of most people. But he had never killed an innocent person, nor had he ever done any forbidden human experiments. From this perspective, his moral bottom line might be higher than many people, even though he had killed countless people so far, and most of them died very painfully. What was this? Some kind of ironic joke. Chapter 249 Meeting. First of all, there is the void, and then there is this evil weapon that can prolong people's life, and there is a mysterious organization of mages in the old man's memory. Shenyan just thinks it is a miracle that Shurima can still exist until now. The use of evil weapons varies. The one in his hand belongs to the simplest one. As long as you carry it and then eat people, it will restrain the soul of the victim and let their flesh and blood add bricks and tiles to your own body. The soul of the victim will enhance the power of the evil weapon itself, making the effect of prolonging life better. Shenyan raised his head and saw a team of guards walking towards him opposite him. The identity of that woman is very special. She has lived for 200 years. She has eaten countless people, even her own descendants. The identity she is using now is her own daughter, and herself is the wife of the city lord. Shenyan shook his head slightly, and the guards were extremely nervous. The person who informed them told them that the man in front of them was a mage, and mages were not welcome in Valoran. Because of their natural magic power, they can cause a lot of damage. It can be said that a mage represents trouble to some extent, but they are not difficult to deal with, as long as they get close. Even the strongest mages will become soft persimmons because they don't have time to cast spells. They quickly rushed to Shenyan, without any extra nonsense. The city lord's order was to kill him. A guard wearing a brand new chainmail stabbed him with a spear in his hand. The mage grinned. He read the guard's mind and saw what he was thinking. As long as I get close, he can't use that damn magic. The problem is, Shenyan raised his hand and accurately grabbed the spear he stabbed. Then he pulled back, grabbed the spear and spun it around, and held it in his hand. I don't need to use magic to fight you. A minute later, he walked towards the city lord's mansion, leaving behind a wailing guard and a broken spear. The garden city is right in front of him. Crossing the yellow sand, Jax patted his mask. He let the stubborn sand that clung to his mask fall off. That was how it was in Shurima. Sometimes you had to stop after walking a few hundred meters, take off your boots, and dump out the sand. He passed 7 quicksand traps along the way and killed an entire group of sand bandits. He was forced to knock out a raging Scarosh. God forbid, he had no idea where it came from, because Scarosh were supposed to have owners. Scarosh are found throughout Shurima, well adapted to the harsh desert climate. Though they are notoriously volatile and unruly, they are still held in high esteem by the locals. Their fur is painted with sacred symbols of protection, and their horns are hung with totems and amulets. To own a Scarosh is to be blessed with prosperity. Jax thought of the scholar he had met during his travels, who was compiling a book on the customs of Valoran. The article on Shurima was full of errors and prejudices, but he was right about Scarosh, except for one thing Jax didn't tell him. A raging Scarosh is an absolute nightmare for people. Just imagine it, a huge beast several meters tall, panting, rushing towards you. The 2 ferocious horns on the top of the head cannot be resisted by any armor. But for Jax, he didn't need to resist. He just jumped, then swung the lamppost, and knocked the Scarosh unconscious with one blow. There were no guards at the gate of the garden city, which surprised Jax. He didn't understand. Could it be that the security in this place has improved after he hadn't been back for a few years? There was no need for guards to search those who entered the door. You know, every day there are scavengers and bandits outside the city who want to sneak into the city. However, he didn't care so much. When he walked into the city, the first thing he saw was the guards lying on the ground. Every household closed the doors and windows. This oasis of Shurima, the garden city, was as silent as a tomb at this time. Well, troubles always come one after another. Jax sighed. He had long been accustomed to the fact that things related to the void would eventually turn out like this. He looked up and found that a pointed building in the center of the city was on fire. Screams and shouts of killing came from there. He squatted slightly and jumped onto the 7 or 8 meter high roof with one jump. Then he ran quickly on the brick and stone roofs. In just a few minutes, He approached the center of the city. Jax squatted behind the roof carefully. No one noticed him for the time being, which was good. He didn't want to get into trouble. There were guards holding large shields and spears everywhere. There were also archers on the roofs of all four sides waiting in battle formation, but they obviously didn't dare to move. There was no other reason. Jax squinted his eyes and looked up. A man in a luxurious robe was floating on the top of the tower. There was no place for him to stand. The whole person seemed to be lifted up by something inexplicably and hung in the air. He kept screaming, but begging for mercy, cursing, crying, or promising benefits were all useless. The black-robed man standing on the balcony opposite him didn't even look at him, but just lowered his head to play with a small golden ring in his hand. Jax saw his lips move, then laughed mockingly, and threw the city lord down. He turned his head away, not wanting to see the scene. Jax had killed many people, but if he had to choose the most unacceptable way to die, it would probably be falling from a high altitude. The man disappeared in the tower, and the guards didn't know what to do. And Jax didn't see a steward come out to control the situation. He couldn't help but complain in his heart. How come this city lord doesn't even have a steward? The man who caused such a big commotion disappeared, and Jax said to himself, "It's a troubled time." "Yes, I agree," a voice came from behind him, and Jax immediately ducked, and the lamppost poked back in a backstab, but there was no response, and even the lamppost disappeared from his hand in the next second. His heart trembled, and he turned around to see the black-robed man he had just seen standing behind him, holding his lamppost in his hand. "Interesting. What kind of flame is this?" the man asked, looking at the flames burning on the top of his lamppost. "Who are you?" Jax was ready to fight for his life. While asking questions to distract the man, he tensed the muscles in his legs. Unexpectedly, the man returned the lamppost to him. "Wanderer, wizard, scholar. By the way, you smell like them." What? Jax was a little confused. The Void. There are 3 more chapters to come. Chapter 250. Fandom of the Past. You know the Void? It was not easy for Jax to say these 2 words. He could almost feel his throat and lips resisting as he uttered these 2 disgusting words. But his will was above all else. Yes, his will was above all else. He said it. The man still acted relaxed. "Of course, I came here because of them, although I also got some unexpected gains." He took out the gold ring again and tossed it in his hand. "Have you seen such a thing?" Jax stared at the gold ring, and a stinging pain came from the surface of his scalp. The disgust from the heart made the warrior's heart begin to ache, and he gritted his teeth. "Blasphemy." "Oh, so you know this thing?" Jax gasped for a moment, and then he had the strength to continue. "Yes, I do." "Listen, sir, if you don't want to be corrupted, please throw it away. Throw it as far as possible. Volcanoes, snowfields, deep seas, no matter where it is, throw it out of this land." Jax's voice was like a roar. He rarely lost his temper like this. But the golden ring was a heavy past for him. "It can't corrupt me," the man said lightly. Jax looked at his calm eyes and suddenly believed his words for no reason. The man took back the golden ring and held out his hand. "I haven't introduced myself yet. My name is Shenyan. If you find it difficult to pronounce, just call me he." Jax stretched out his hand and shook his hand. He had never seen such etiquette before. People usually use kisses or hugs to express politeness, but this is not bad. The man shook hands very strongly. As a warrior, he liked this kind of collision. "Well, let's talk about business, Mr. Jax. As you can see, I broke into this beautiful city and killed 2 people. Sorry, 3. He smiled and pointed to the mud under the tower not far away. His expression was relaxed and he had no guilt for killing people. "But everything happened for a reason. I came here to track down the Void, but I got a little unexpected gain. As I said, you call it blasphemy, right?" Jax nodded. Yes, a very appropriate name, but we call it the evil weapon. It doesn't make any difference. Look, Mr. Jax, the Void is like a pool of smelly and disgusting shit, and the evil weapon is no less. What do we get when we mix the 2 piles of shit together? Jax had to admit one thing. He had begun to like the way this man talked about things. Although he called himself a scholar and a wizard, His conversation was not tainted with their sour smell at all. Simple, direct, and interesting enough. As for being a bit vulgar, that was not within his consideration. Jax replied, "A bigger pile of shit." "Yes, you're right." Shenyan laughed. "Where did you come from? The plain outside the city?" "Yes." "Ah. I guess you've seen my masterpiece. That place should be a little difficult to walk on, right?" "Sorry, I didn't mean to do that, but some of their tentacles are still stirring underground, so I left a backup plan." "Did you do the rioting magic?" "Yes, it was me." "By the way, Mr. Jax, why did you come here?" "I think with your strength and the mysterious lamppost, you don't have to dress so shabby." Jax's face under the mask showed a bitter smile. Of course, he knew that his clothes hadn't been washed for many days. The original purple was almost turning black, but in Shurima, if you dare to use water to wash clothes, you can expect to be beaten. Although Jax was confident that no one could beat him in a one-on-one bare-handed duel, he didn't want to go around with the reputation of wasting water. "Just like you, Mr. He. I also came here to track down the Void." After hesitating for a moment, Jax told the wizard everything he had encountered before. He was not good at thinking, so he might as well leave it to the wizard to do this. Wizards are usually philosophers. In his opinion, there is no problem that they cannot find the answer to. Shenyan nodded. "There are two possibilities. First, the girl was fabricated by illusion. You said you trusted her too quickly, so we have to add the possibility of charm. As for the second possibility, how about this, Mr. Jax? Why don't you recall the girl's face?" Jax did as he was told. When he opened his eyes again, he saw an illusory blue spirit standing in front of him and the wizard, on the roof. It was the little girl. "Who is this?" Jax looked at the wizard, then at the little girl. He spread his hands, unable to speak. "Don't get me wrong. This is just a small magic of revealing. I have retrieved a part of your surface thoughts, which is the image of her that you just imagined. Now we can take a good look at this little girl who appeared out of nowhere." Jax did as he said and looked carefully. But no matter how he looked at it, the girl was just an ordinary child. There was nothing special, and there was no suspicious place from head to toe. "I can't see what's wrong with her." Jax shook his head and said, "You know, Mr. Jax?" The wizard suddenly frowned, walked a little closer to the girl's phantom, and then asked, "What?" "Sometimes, having no problem is the biggest problem," the wizard said slowly, and finally snapped his fingers. The girl began to grow up at a rapid speed. Her face became mature, and her posture became agile. The linen clothes were replaced by a set of armor, and she held a disc in her hand, with a sharp light on the edge. The wizard took a few steps back. "Sometimes, I really hope that I am wrong," he said so, then turned his head to look at Jax, who was in a daze, and reached out to pat him. "Judging from your reaction, you should know who she is, right?" he asked. Of course Jax knew her. How could he not know her? During the time when Icathia was fighting to the bitter end, he fought against the Ascended Ones and the brave mortal soldiers of the Shurima Empire on the city walls more than once. Among them was a woman who was not tall, but the most powerful. Whenever the siege began, she always led the charge and was always the first to rush in. The sharp giant disc in her hand had harvested countless Icathian lives. That was the greatest emperor of the ancient Shurima Empire, Queen Setaka, the leader of the Ascended Ones, the son of the Sand, the most noble bloodline in the world. No, I don't believe it, Jax muttered to himself. I don't believe she is still alive, and it was she who reminded me of the traces of those things. How is this possible? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.